The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Episode 2 in another series of these famous stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is called The Retired Colourman. And here, as usual, to tell you the story is Dr. Watson.
Thank you. It was late one summer afternoon. I returned from my club to 221B Baker Street to find Sherlock Holmes's gaunt figure stretched in his deep chair, his pipe curling forth slow wreaths of acrid tobacco, while his eyelids drooped over his eyes so lazily that he might almost have been asleep. I recognized his melancholy and philosophic mood. His alert, practical nature was subject to such reactions.
Well, my dear Watson, did you see him?
Who? Oh, the old fellow who's just gone out.
Precisely.
I met him at the door, yes.
What did you think of him?
Well, pathetic, futile, broken creature.
Exactly, Watson. Pathetic and futile. But is not all life pathetic and futile? Isn't his story a microcosm of the whole? We reach, we grasp, and what is left in our hands at the end? A shadow. Or worse than the shadow, misery.
Oh, come, Holmes. Is he one of your clients?
I suppose so. He's been sent on by the Yard, just as medical men occasionally send their incurables to a quack. They argue that they can do nothing more, so whatever happens, the patient can't be worse than he is.
What's the matter with him? Who is he, anyway?
Mr. Josiah Amberley.
Oh.
He says he was junior partner of Brickfull and Amberley, manufacturers of artistic materials. He made his little pile, retired at the age of 61, bought a house at Lewisham, and settled down to rest after a life of ceaseless grind.
Sounds a comfortable prospect.
Retired in 1896, Watson. Early in 1897, he married a woman 20 years younger than himself.
Uh-huh.
Yes, good-looking, too, if her photograph doesn't flatter. A competence, a wife, leisure. It looked like a straight road before him. Yet within 2 years, as you've seen, he is as broken and miserable a creature as crawls beneath the sun.
But what's happened, Holmes?
The old story. A treacherous friend and a fickle wife.
Oh.
It seems that Amberley has one hobby in his life, chess. Not far from him at Lewisham there lives a young doctor, Dr. Ray Ernest, who is also a chess player. Ernest was frequently in Amberley's house, and an intimacy between him and Amberley's wife was the result.
That doesn't surprise me. Your client doesn't look like a paragon of the graces.
The couple went off together last week. Destination so far untraced. What's more, the woman carried off the old man's deed box by way of personal luggage. It had a good part of his life savings in it.
That's bad.
So, Watson, can we find the lady? Can we save the money?
Commonplace sort of case to bother you with, Holmes.
But vital enough to poor Josiah Amberley.
Well, that's so. What'll you do, then?
What will you do, my dear Watson? If you'll be good enough to understand me, that is. You know how preoccupied I am with this case of the 2 Coptic patriarchs. It should come to a head today. No, I really haven't time to go out to Lewisham. And yet, evidence taken on the spot has a special value.
Well, by all means, Holmes. I confess, I don't see that I can be of much service, but I'm willing to do my best.
Capital. The old fellow was quite insistent that I should go. But I explained my difficulty. He's quite prepared to meet a representative.
Oh, excuse me, sir.
I beg your pardon, sir?
I'm looking for the house of Mr. Josiah Amberley, the Haven. I wonder if you'd happen to...
There it is, straight across the road.
Good heavens, I must have walked straight past it.
Often happens like that.
I'm much obliged to you, sir.
Of course, I could hardly expect that so humble an individual as myself would merit the complete attention of so famous a man as Mr. Sherlock Holmes, especially after my heavy financial loss.
I can assure you, Mr. Amberley, that the financial question does not arise.
No, of course. It's art for art's sake with him, I understand. Still, even on the artistic side of crime, he might have found something here to study. And human nature, Dr. Watson. Oh, the black ingratitude of it all.
Mr. Amberley, I
Tell
don't
me,
want to...
when did I ever refuse one of her requests? Was ever a woman so pampered as that one?
Mr.
And
Amberley...
that young man, he might have been my own son, had the run of my house. And see how they've treated me.
Mr. Amberley, sir!
Oh, it's a dreadful world. Dreadful. Did you say something?
I was merely going to point out that if you continue to wave that paintbrush about like that, it wouldn't be long before you did your clothing a bit... I'm afraid the damage is done.
Oh, dear me. You see how this business has distracted me. I'm in the middle of painting this hall. You seem surprised, Doctor. One must do something to ease an aching heart. I'd started painting the house only the day before they disappeared. I thought I might as well carry on.
Very sensible indeed, Mr. Amberley.
Oh, but pray, step into my sanctum, away from this paint smell.
Oh, thank you. Ah, that's better.
Yes. Oh, pray, take a seat.
Thank you.
Good. Now then, where shall I begin my account? With my retirement and marriage, perhaps?
Oh, no, not necessarily at all. Mr. Holmes merely requested certain details. For example, the events of the actual evening of your wife's disappearance.
Oh, how shall I ever forget them? To think that I prepared a special treat for the shameless creature.
A treat?
The Haymarket Theatre.
Oh.
2 upper circle seats. A gay evening, I thought. Perhaps a little supper somewhere. But no. She produced a headache and refused to go. You see here, I have it here. Her very ticket, unused. Seat 31, row B.
Then you had to go alone?
I did. There I sat all through the performance, her empty seat beside me. And little did I realize what an ill omen it was.
You returned to find her gone?
Just so. But that was not all.
Oh?
You see this door?
Yes.
It's iron, painted to look like wood. It's my strong room. Safe as a bank, I always thought. But not where she was concerned.
Ah. Your deed box was taken, I believe.
Deed box. Cash, securities. About £7,000 worth. She must have had a duplicate key.
I see. But securities, how could they hope to dispose of these?
My one remaining hope is that they can't. I've given the police a list in the hope they'll prove unsaleable.
Very wise. Then, Mr. Amberley, there was no note, no message from your wife?
I've heard no word from or about her since I left to go to the theatre that fateful evening, leaving her alone here with her headache. Not one single word, Dr. Watson.
And the seat number was 31, you say, Watson? You're quite sure?
Yes, positive. My old school number.
Excellent. Then his own seat was either 30 or 32.
Row B.
Yes. Well, Watson, have you told me all?
I think so. Oh, did I say that he tore up a photograph of his wife in my presence?
No.
I never wish to see her damn face again, he cried.
His money before his wife, I fancy.
No, without a doubt. Ah, there was one more thing, Holmes.
Yes, Watson?
Well, it doesn't concern Amberley directly, but...
Go on.
Well, I told you how I somehow missed Amberley's house at first and had to ask a fellow standing about at the other side of the road.
Mm.
Well, this chap, he was tall, dark, heavy moustache, rather military-looking. I thought he gave me rather a curious look when I mentioned Amberley's name. But later, when I drove back to Blackheath Station, I saw him again, getting out of a cab that had been following along behind mine. And then, just as I was getting into the train, I saw him nip into the next compartment as though he didn't wish to be seen. You know, Holmes, I'm convinced the fellow was following me.
Tall, did you say?
Yes.
Heavy moustache, tinted sunglasses.
I didn't say he had sunglasses on, but now that you mention it, he had.
He wore a Masonic tie-pin?
Holmes, how on earth...
Quite simple, my dear Watson. But let us get down to what is practical. I must admit that a case which seemed to be so absurdly simple as to be hardly worth my notice is rapidly assuming a very different aspect. It's true that in your mission you've missed everything of importance.
Holmes.
Yet even those things which have obtruded themselves on your notice give rise to serious thought.
What have I missed?
Don't be hurt, my dear fellow. No one else would have done better. But clearly you've missed some vital points. What do the neighbors think about Amberley and his wife? What of Dr. Ernest? Was he the gay Lothario one would expect? Surely these are of importance.
Well,
With your natural advantages, Watson, every lady is your helper and accomplice. What about the girl at the post office or the greengrocer's wife? I can picture you whispering soft nothings with the lady of the Blue Anchor and receiving hard somethings in exchange. All this you've left undone.
It can still be done.
It has been done. Thanks to the telephone and the help of Scotland Yard, I can usually get my essentials without leaving this room. As a matter of fact, my information confirms Amberley's own story. He has the local reputation of being a miser, as well as a harsh and exacting husband. It's also certain that he had a large sum of money in that strong room.
Well, then.
And it's common gossip that young Dr. Ernest played chess with Amberley, and probably played the fool with his wife. It all seems plain sailing. And yet...
Where's the difficulty?
In my imagination, perhaps. Well, leave it there, Watson. Let us escape from this weary workaday world by the side door of music. Corina sings tonight at the Albert Hall. We still have time to dress, dine, and enjoy.
Well, Holmes, well, where have you been all day?
As I told you in the note I left for you to find at breakfast, there were one or two points I wish to clear up regarding Mr. Josiah Amberley. Has he been here yet?
Amberley? No.
Come in. Ah, Mrs. Hudson.
There's a Mr. Amberley to see you, sir.
Show him in, Mrs. Hudson.
Very good, sir. Mr. Josiah Amberley.
Ah, Mr. Amberley. Pray step inside.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes, I've had a telegram. I can make nothing of it.
Thank you. Come at once without fail. Can give you information as to your recent loss, Elman, the vicarage. Dispatched at 2:10 from Little Purlington. Watson, hand down my Crockford, if you please.
You're right, Holmes.
Little Purlington's in Essex, isn't it?
Yes, not far from Frinton.
Elman. Yes, here we have him. J.C. Elman, M.A. Living of Mossmore come Little Purlington. And now, Mr. Amberley, you must start at once.
But I don't understand.
Will you look up a train for our friend, Watson?
I am doing.
Good fellow.
Mr. Holmes, will you...
Liverpool Street, 5:20, Holmes.
Excellent, excellent. You'd best go with Mr. Amberley, Watson. He may need help or advice. It's clear we've come to a crisis in this affair.
But it's perfectly absurd, Mr. Holmes. What can this country vicar possibly know of what's occurred? It's a waste of time and money.
He would scarcely have telegraphed if he didn't know something. You should wire him at once that you're coming.
I don't think I shall go.
Mr. Amberley, it would make the worst possible impression both on the police and upon myself if you should refuse to follow up so obvious a clue. We should feel that you were not really in earnest in this investigation.
Well, if you look at it that way, of course I shall go. On the face of it, it seems absurd to suppose that this parson knows anything, but if you think...
I do think. Now, hurry along, sir, and Dr. Watson shall catch you up at the telegraph office at the corner.
Oh, very well, then. A waste of time and money, in my opinion. Pouring money down the drain.
I say.
Watson, Whatever you do, see that he really does go. If he breaks away from you or decides to return, get to the nearest telegraph office and send the single word, bolted. I'll arrange here that it shall reach me wherever I am.
Little Pearlington isn't an easy place to reach. My remembrance of the journey isn't a pleasant one. The weather was hot, the train slow, and my companion sullen and silent. He hardly talked at all, save to make an occasional sardonic remark about the futility of our proceedings. When we at last reached the station, it was a 2-mile drive before we came to the vicarage, where a big, solemn, rather pompous clergyman received us in his study. Our telegram lay before him.
Well, gentlemen, what could I do for you?
We came in answer to your wire, Mr. Ellman.
My wire?
Yes.
I sent no wire.
I mean the one you sent to Mr. Josiah Amberley about his wife and his money.
If this is a joke, sir, it is a very questionable one.
No, I assure you.
I have never heard of the gentleman you name, and I have not sent a wire to anyone.
I knew it would be a wild goose chase.
Perhaps there is some mistake. Are there 2 vicarages, perhaps?
There is only one vicarage, sir, and only one vicar. The wire you refer to is obviously a scandalous forgery, the origin of which shall certainly be investigated by the police. Meanwhile, gentlemen, I can see no possible object in prolonging this interview.
Holmes? Is that you, Holmes?
Yes, my dear Watson. How are things proceeding?
They aren't, Holmes. The vicar never sent any such wire. He was very annoyed. Holmes, are you still there?
Most singular. Most remarkable. I very much fear, my dear Watson, that there is no return train tonight. I have unwittingly condemned you to the horrors of a country inn. However, there is always nature, Watson. Nature and Josiah Amberley. You can be in close commune with both.
Thank you very much, Holmes.
Don't mention it, my dear fellow. Good night.
Good night.
Well, what did he say?
He said it was a most remarkable business.
Remarkable? I should prefer the word expensive. Our railway fare here...
Third class?
I pay more. And now a hotel bill. It's monstrous. Monstrous. I shall have a word to say to Mr. Sherlock Holmes tomorrow.
Very well, sir. We'll drive directly to Baker Street from the station. And now we'd better make arrangements for tonight. I warned Holmes by telegram at the time of our arrival at Baker Street next day. But when we got there, we found a message to say that he was at Lewisham and would expect us there. That didn't improve Amberley's temper. It was a surprise to me, but an even greater one was to find that Holmes was not alone at Amberley's house. In a sitting room, a stern-looking, well-built man sat beside him. A dark, heavily moustached man, wearing tinted sunglasses and sporting a large Masonic pin in his tie.
Ah, gentlemen. Allow me to introduce my friend, Mr. Barker. Mr. Amberley. Dr. Watson, you've met already.
How do you do?
Pleased to meet you.
Mr. Holmes, I have a word to say. Not only have I been subjected to the greatest inconvenience and expense upon your advice, but I now arrive home to find that you've invited a stranger into my house without a by your leave.
Mr. Barker has been interesting himself in your business too, Mr. Amberley.
I repeat, in my business?
We have been working independently of one another, you understand?
But we both have the same question to ask you now.
Question? What question, Mr. Holmes?
What did you do with the bodies?
Great heaven. No. You shan't ask that.
Get hold of him, Watson.
Right, Holmes, I've got...
Barker!
I had him. No. You shan't make me answer. You shan't.
Look out, he's taking something.
His arm. Seize hold of him.
Right. No, let me be. Hold still. Confound you.
Well done, Barker. No shortcuts, Amberley. Things must be done decently and in order.
I may as well take him straight to the station. Shall I tell the inspector you'll be coming along?
You'll want to examine this house sooner or later. I fancy he won't object to meeting me here.
Very well. I'll come back with him. Now, come on, you. Go on, any nonsense. And I'll have your own bucket.
And here thing, Holmes. It was a poison capsule. Look. Holmes, this Barker.
My hated rival upon the Surrey shore.
Rival?
When you described him, it wasn't difficult for me to complete the picture. He has several good cases to his credit. His methods are irregular, like my own. We irregulars are useful sometimes, you know.
Well, Holmes, let's hear what it's all about, eh?
All in good time, my dear Watson. The inspector will be along shortly for the same account. By your leave, I'll enjoy a few minutes' quiet smoke and marshal the facts for your delectation.
I just want to make this clear before you begin, Mr. Holmes. Don't imagine that we hadn't formed our own views of this case and that we wouldn't have laid our hands on the man. You'll excuse us for feeling sore when you jump in with methods which we can't use and so rob us of the credit.
There shall be no such robbery, Inspector McKinnon. I quite agree that with your compulsory warning about whatever he said being used against him, you could never have bluffed that rascal into what was virtually a confession. I assure you that I efface myself from now onwards. As to Mr. Barker here, he has done nothing save what I told him.
That's quite correct.
Well, that's very handsome of you, Mr. Holmes. Praise or blame can't matter much to you. It's different for the police when the newspapers start asking questions.
Quite so. But they're pretty sure to ask questions anyhow. So it would be as well to have the answers. What will you say, for example, when the intelligent and enterprising reporter asks you what the exact points were which aroused your suspicion and finally gave you a certain conviction as to the real facts?
Well, now, well, we don't seem to have got any real facts yet. You say that the prisoner practically confessed that he murdered his wife and her lover by trying to commit suicide in the presence of 3 witnesses. What other facts have you?
Have you arranged for such?
Aye, there are 2 constables on their way.
Then you'll get the clearest fact of all. The bodies can't be far away. Try the cellars and the garden. It shouldn't take long to dig up the likely places. This house is older than its water pipes, so there must be a disused well somewhere. Try your luck there.
But how did you know there'd been murder?
Yes, Holmes. How was it done?
I'll show you first how it was done, Inspector. And then I'll give you the explanation which is due to you. And even more to my long-suffering friend, Dr. Watson, who has been invaluable throughout. But first, I'd like you to consider this man Amberley's mentality. It's a very unusual one. So much so that I think his destination is more likely to be Broadmoor than the scaffold.
Is that so? Please go on, then.
He has, to a high degree, the sort of mind one associates with the medieval Italian nature rather than with the modern Briton. He was a miserable miser who made his wife so wretched by his niggardly ways that she was a ready prey for any adventurer. Such a one came upon the scene in the person of this chess-playing doctor. Amberley excelled at chess. One mark, Watson, of a scheming mind.
Really?
Like all misers, he was a jealous man, and his jealousy became a frantic mania. Rightly or wrongly, he suspected an intrigue. He determined to have his revenge, and he planned it with diabolical cleverness. Have a look here. This is his so-called strong room.
Oof, stinking paint.
That was our first clue. You can thank Dr. Watson's observation for that. Though he failed to draw the inference, it set my foot on the trail.
I still don't understand, Holmes.
Ask yourself, Watson. Why should this man at such a time be filling his house with strong odors? Obviously to cover some other smell which he wished to conceal. Some guilty smell which would suggest suspicions.
You mean decomposition? But there hasn't been time for it.
No. Nothing of the sort. Add to the suspicious matter of the smell the fact that there existed such a room as you see here, with a sealed iron door. Put the 2 facts together, and where do they lead?
Blessed if I know.
No, me too.
Well, let it pass for now. I was already certain that the case was serious, because I had examined the box office charts at the Haymarket Theatre, another of Dr. Watson's bullseyes. It showed that neither B30 nor 32 of the upper circle had been occupied on the night in question.
Then he lied. He never went to the theatre.
And so his alibi fell to the ground. He made a bad slip when he let you see his wife's unused ticket, Watson.
Yes.
The only way I could satisfy my suspicions about the smell of paint and the existence of this sealed room was to examine the house itself. The question was, how was I to achieve this?
I know. Now I see it.
Yes, Watson. I sent an agent to the most impossibly remote village I could think of, and summoned Amberley to go there at such an hour that he couldn't possibly get back the same day.
And sent me with him to make sure he really went.
The good vicar's name I simply got out of my Crockford.
Masterly. Brilliant.
There being no fear of interruption, I proceeded to burgle the house. Burglary has always been an alternative profession, if I'd cared to adopt it. I've little doubt I should have reached the front rank.
Oh, Mr. Holmes.
Anyway, see what I found. You see the gas pipe along the skirting board?
Yes?
Very good. It rises in the angle of the wall, and there's a tap in the corner. Now, follow me. Into the strong room.
Mm-hmm.
You see that plaster rose in the center of the ceiling?
Yes?
The pipe finishes there with an open end. At any moment, by turning the outside tap, this room could be flooded with gas. With its door closed and the tap full on, I wouldn't give 2 minutes of consciousness to anyone shut in here.
Yeah.
By what devilish devices he decoyed them in there, I don't know. But once inside, they were at his mercy.
I've seen enough of that place.
So he started painting the house to cover up any smell of gas afterwards, Holmes.
Precisely. He claimed to have started painting that day before their disappearance. But he should have said the day after.
Well, what's next?
Then came an incident which I hardly expected. I was slipping out again through the pantry window at early dawn today, when I felt a hand grab my collar, and a voice said,
"Now, you rascal, what you doing in there?"
When I could twist my head round, I recognized my friend and rival, Mr. Barker.
Mm-hmm. So, just where do you come into this, Mr. Barker?
Well, I've been engaged by the family of Dr. Ray Ernest to make some investigations. I'd come to the conclusion there'd been foul play like Mr. Holmes. I've been watching this house for several days. I'd marked you down, Dr. Watson, as one of the most suspicious characters to visit the place.
Oh, thank you very much.
Still, I could hardly detain you. But when I saw a man actually climbing out of the pantry window this morning, I couldn't restrain myself.
And there you are, Inspector. You have all the particulars. I hand them over to you and step right out of the case.
Well, on behalf of the force, many thanks, Mr. Holmes. It seems a clear case, the way you put it.
You'll get results, Inspector, by always putting yourself in the other fellow's place and thinking what you would do yourself. It takes imagination, but it pays.
Yes.
Holmes, what about the missing money and security?
Oh, they'll be found in some safe place where Amberley hid them. There was no robbery.
Ah. Well, you've met every point, Holmes. There's only one last thing puzzles me.
Oh?
Amberley couldn't avoid notifying the police of his wife's so-called disappearance, but why was he fool enough to go to you as well?
Oh, pure swank. He felt so clever and so sure of himself that he imagined no one could touch him. He could say to any suspicious neighbor, "Look at the steps I've taken. I've consulted not only the police, but even Sherlock Holmes."
I'll have to forgive you that even Sherlock Holmes. Yes, it's as workmanlike a job as I can remember.
There you heard Robert Langford and Kenneth Baker as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Others in the cast were Beth Boltler, George Corellan, Tony Jay, Louis Ife, and Frank Douglas. At the same time next week, you can hear another Sherlock Holmes adventure called The Three Gables.
And to introduce our Sherlock Holmes adventure entitled The Three Gables, here is Dr. Watson.
Thank you. I don't think any of my adventures with Mr. Sherlock Holmes open quite so abruptly or so dramatically as that which I associate with The Three Gables. Holmes was in a chatty mood that morning. He'd just curled down with his pipe in his mouth on a well-worn armchair across the fireside from me when our visitor arrived. If I'd said that a mad bull had arrived, it'd give a clearer impression.
What the devil?
Which of you two is Holmes?
Yes, it is a pleasant morning for the time of year.
Oh, it's you, is it? Well, see here, keep your hands out of other folks' business. Leave folks to manage their own affairs. Got that?
Do keep on talking. It's fine.
Oh, fine, is it? It won't be so damn fine if I have to trim you up a bit. I've handled your kind before now, and they didn't look fine when I was through with them. Look at that.
I do believe it's a fist. Or is it? Tell me, were you born so, or did it come by degrees?
I'll give you fair warning, see? I've a friend that's interested out Arrow way. You know what I mean. He don't intend to have no butting in by you. You ain't the law, and I ain't the law. And if you come shoving in, I'll be on hand.
You know, I've wanted to meet you for some time. I won't ask you to sit down, but aren't you Steve Dixie, the bruiser?
What if I am?
I was just recalling the killing of young Perkins outside the Holborn bar.
I didn't have nothing to do with Perkins. I was training at the bull ring in Birmingham when he got done in.
Really? Well, all the same, I've got my eye on you, Steve. You and Barney Stockdale.
But so help me,
That's enough. I can pick you up whenever I want you. Now, get out of here.
There ain't no hard feelings, Mr. Holmes. Nothing personal.
There will be, unless you tell me who sent you.
Well, there ain't no secret about that. Stockdale sent me. Him you just mentioned.
Then what's it all about?
So help me, I don't know. Steve, he says, you go and see that Holmes and tell him his life ain't safe if he goes down Arrow way. That's the truth, honest.
I'll believe you, if no one else would. Now, get out.
Sure, Mr. Holmes. I'm going. Morning, gents both.
When I saw you reaching for that poker, Watson, I thought you might be going to break his fat head.
One sign from you, Holmes.
Oh, he's a harmless fellow, really. A great, muscular, foolish, blustering baby.
You toned him down easily enough.
This fellow Barney Stockdale's rather more astute. They belong to the Spencer John gang, assault, intimidation, and the like. They've been mixed up in some dirty work lately, which I may clear up when I've got time.
But why do they want to intimidate you?
It's the Harrow Weald case.
Something new to me, Holmes.
I was just settling down to tell you about it before we had that comic interlude.
I see.
Here's a note from the lady concerned, Mrs. Maberly.
Thanks. Dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I have had a succession of strange incidents occur to me in connection with this house, and I should much value your advice. You would find me at home any time tomorrow. The house is within a short walk of the Weald station. I believe that my late husband, Mortimer Maberly, was one of your clients. Yours faithfully, Mary Maberly. The Three Gables, Harrow Weald.
I wasn't at all sure whether to go. But if it's worth anybody's while taking the trouble to stop me, then there must be something in it. Care to come with me?
Of course.
Excellent. We'll wire her and set off at once. I remember your husband well, madam, though it's some years since he used my services in some trifling matter.
Probably you would be more familiar with the name of my son, Douglas, Mr. Holmes.
Douglas Maberly? The Douglas Maberly?
Dear me. Douglas Maberly. I knew him slightly, but then all London knew him. What a magnificent creature.
Where is he these days, Mrs. Maberly?
Dead.
Dead?
He was attaché at Rome. He died there of pneumonia last month.
I am sorry, Mrs. Maberly. One cannot connect death with such a man. I've never known anyone so intensely alive.
Too intensely, Mr. Holmes. That was the ruin of him.
His ruin?
You remember him as he was, debonair and splendid. You did not see the moody, morose, brooding creature into which he developed. In a single month, I seem to see my gallant boy turn into a worn-out, cynical man.
A love affair? A woman?
Or a fiend. But it was not to talk of my poor boy that I asked you to come, Mr. Holmes.
Dr. Watson and I are at your service, ma'am.
There have been some very strange happenings. I have been in this house more than a year now, and as I wish to lead a retired life, I have seen little of my neighbors. 3 days ago, I had a call from a man who said he was a house agent. He said that this house would exactly suit a client of his, and that if I would part with it, money would be no object.
Strange sort of approach.
That was how it seemed to me, Doctor, especially since there are several empty houses on the market in this neighborhood which appear to be equally eligible. However, I was interested in what he said. I named a price which was £500 more than I gave. He closed at once, but added that his client would wish to buy the furniture as well, and asked me to put a price on it.
Remarkable way to go on.
Some of this furniture is from my old home, and it is, as you see, very good. So I named a good round sum. To this he also agreed. I'd always wanted to travel, and the whole bargain was so good that it really seemed that I should be my own mistress for the rest of my life.
But some snag has arisen.
Yesterday, the man arrived with the agreement all drawn out. Luckily, I showed it to Mr. Sutro, my lawyer. He said to me, "This is a very strange document. Are you aware that if you sign it, you could not legally take anything out of the house, not even your own private possessions?"
Good heavens.
So, what did you do, Mrs. Mabley?
Why, when the man came again in the evening, I pointed this out, and said that I meant only to sell the furniture. He said, no, it must be everything. Well, naturally, I argued about my clothes, my jewels, and in the end, he agreed to make some concessions as to my personal effects. But he insisted that nothing must leave the house unchecked.
Did he give any reason for this extraordinary demand?
Nothing, beyond saying that his client was a very liberal man, but had certain fads and fancies, and his own way of doing things.
Evidently.
Then, what was the outcome?
I refused, much as I was tempted by the money. I could not bring myself to submit to such terms, and... What is it, Mr. Holmes? Where are you going?
Susan! Oh, leave me alone. What do you think you're doing?
What is this, Susan?
Oh, ma'am, I was just coming to ask if the visitors were staying for lunch when this man jumps out and drags me in, like you see.
I have been listening to her for the last 5 minutes. People who wheeze shouldn't listen at keyholes, Susan.
Susan?
Oh, Lucy, anyway. What right has he to go pulling a girl about like that?
It was merely that I wished to ask a question in your presence. Mrs. Mabley, did you mention to anyone that you were going to write to me and consult me?
No, Mr. Holmes, I did not.
Who posted your letter?
Susan did.
Exactly. Now, Susan, to whom did you write or send a message to say that your mistress was asking advice from me?
It's a lie. I sent no message.
Now, Susan, wicked people may not live long, you know. Who was it?
Susan, I believe you are a bad, treacherous woman. I remember now seeing you speaking to someone over the hedge.
That was my business.
Suppose I tell you it was Barney Stockdale.
You saw? I'm not saying.
Well, I wasn't sure, but I now know. Susan, it'll be worth £10 to you if you will tell me who is at the back of Barney.
Someone that could lay down 1,000 quid for every 10 you've got in the world.
A rich man, eh? You smile. A rich woman.
Come.
Oh, come. Now that we've got so far, you might as well give me her name and earn your tenner.
I'm clearing out of here. I've had enough of the lot of you, and I'll send for my box tomorrow.
Goodbye, Susan. Paregoric is the stuff for that chest of yours. Now, Mrs. Mabley, this gang means business. Look how close they play the game. Your letter to me had the 10 p.m. postmark. Yet Susan passes the word to Barney. Barney goes to his employer. A plan is formed. Big Steve Dixie is called in, and I am warned off, all by 11 o'clock next morning. That's quick work, you know.
Yes, I see. But what do they want?
Who had this house before you, Mrs. Maberly?
A retired sea captain called Ferguson.
Anything remarkable about him?
Not to my knowledge.
Wondering whether he'd buried some treasure in the house, Holmes?
It's a possibility. Of course, when people bury treasure nowadays, they do it in the post office. There are always some lunatics about. It'd be a dull world without them. At first I thought of some buried valuables. But why, in that case, should they want your furniture? You don't happen to have a Raphael or a First Folio Shakespeare without knowing it.
I don't think I have anything rarer than a Crown Derby tea set.
That'd hardly justify all this mystery, would it? I mean, if they want your tea set, they're ready to offer a price for it straight out, without buying you up, lock, stock, and barrel. What I can't understand, Holmes, is why they don't openly say what they do want.
Because, as I read it, my dear Watson, there is something which Mrs. Maberly does not know she has, and which she would not give up if she did know.
Ah, that's it.
Dr. Watson agrees, so that settles it.
But what can it be, Mr. Holmes?
Let us see whether we can get to a finer point by purely mental analysis. You have been in this house a year, I believe.
Nearly 2.
All the better. During this long period, no one has wanted anything from you. Now, suddenly within 3 or 4 days, you have urgent demands. What would you gather from that?
I really don't know.
It must mean that the object, whatever it may be, has only just come into the house.
Bravo. Has any object just arrived?
No. I've bought nothing new this year.
Indeed. This is very remarkable. Well, I think we'd best let matters develop a little further until we have a clearer data. Is that lawyer of yours a capable man?
Mr. Sutro is very capable.
Have you another maid? Or was the fair Susan alone?
I have a young girl.
Then try to get Sutro to spend a night or 2 in the house. You may need protection.
Protection? Against whom?
Who knows? The matter is certainly obscure. If I can't find what they are after, I must approach the matter from the other end and try and get at the principle. Did this house agent give any address?
Only his name, Haynes Johnson.
I don't think we shall find him in the directory. Honest businessmen don't conceal their place of business. Well, you'll let me know any fresh developments.
Most certainly, Mr. Holmes.
You may rely upon it that I shall see your case through.
It was very good of you to come.
Not at all. Hello?
What is it, Mr. Holmes?
These trunks and suitcases in the hall. I see they're labeled from Italy.
Yes. They're poor Douglas's things.
You haven't unpacked them. How long have you had them?
They arrived last week.
But you said... Why, surely this might be the missing link. How do we know there isn't something of value in there?
There couldn't possibly be. Poor Douglas only had his pay and a small annuity. What could he have of value?
Delay no longer, Mrs. Maberly. Have those things taken up to your bedroom. Examine them as soon as possible and see what they contain. I will come tomorrow and hear your report. Good day, madam.
Good day, ma'am.
Good day, gentlemen.
Hello.
What now?
They are watching this place closely enough. See our prize-fighting friend lurking near the gate. What? You again, Steve?
You reaching for your gun, Mr. Holmes?
No, for my scent bottle, till I get past you.
Oh, real funny.
It won't be funny for you if I get after you, Steve.
Look, Mr. Holmes, I've been thinking about that. I don't want no trouble over that Perkins affair. Suppose I can help you instead.
You can, Steve. Tell me who's behind Barney in this job.
Swell me, I don't know. Barney gives the orders, and that's as far as I go.
Well, then, just bear in mind that the lady in that house and everything under that roof is under my protection. Don't forget it.
All right, Mr. Holmes. I'll remember.
Scared him stiff.
But I don't think he knows who his boss is. He'd double-cross him readily enough if he did.
How are you going to find out who's behind it then, Holmes?
I think this is a case for Langdale Pike.
Langdale Pike. You're going for a climb, Holmes?
Langdale Pike, my dear Watson, is my human book of reference on all matters of social scandal. He spends his waking hours in the bow window of a St. James's Street club. And he's the receiving station and transmitter of all the gossip of the metropolis.
Aha.
They say he makes a 4-figure income out of the paragraphs he contributes to the garbage papers. If ever, far down in the turgid depths of London life, there's some strange swirl or eddy, you can be sure it's marked with automatic exactness by this human dial on the surface.
Oh, really, Holmes?
Oh, I mean it. Yes, this is a case for Langdale Pike, Watson. I have a good many inquiries to pursue. We'll part our ways here, and I probably shan't see you again until morning. Adieu.
Bye, Holmes.
My dear Watson, I didn't disturb you last night, I hope.
Never heard a sound. Holmes, Mrs. Hudson just gave me this telegram for you.
Thank you.
Yes, a bit early in the morning for that sort of thing.
An unpleasant surprise into the bargain. Please come out at once. Client's house burgled in the night. Police in possession. Sutro.
I say.
So the drama comes to a crisis quicker than I'd expected. This lawyer of hers has proved a broken reed. I made a mistake in not asking you to keep guard there.
Nothing for it but another journey, then.
Immediately. There's a great driving power at the back of this business. We must lose no time ourselves.
Look, Holmes, our old friend Lestrade. Morning, Inspector.
Morning, Dr. Watson. Well, Mr. Holmes, there's no chance for you in this case, I'm sorry to say. Just a common or garden burglary. Well within the capacity of the poor old police. No experts need apply.
I'm sure the matter is in very good hands, Lestrade. Common burglary, you say?
Not a doubt. We know who they are and where to find them. That Barney Stockdale lot. Steve Dixie and them. They've been hanging around here.
Really? What did they get?
Oh, nothing much. They chloroformed the lady, though. Oh, here she is with her lawyer, Sutro.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes, pray sit down, madam.
Thank you, Doctor. You gave me good advice, Mr. Holmes. Alas, I didn't take it, and I left myself unprotected.
Holmes, Mrs. Maberly looks wretchedly ill. I don't think she should be troubled now.
It's all in my notebook anyway.
Madam, if you are not too exhausted, I should like to hear your story for myself.
Holmes!
It's all right, Doctor. There's so little to tell. I have no doubt that wicked Susan arranged for them to get in. They must have known the house to an inch. I was conscious for an instant of the chloroform gag being pressed to my mouth, but I have no notion how long I was senseless. When I woke, one man was at the bedside and another was removing something from my son's baggage, which I'd taken up to my room as you suggested. I sprang up and seized this man.
You took a big risk, ma'am.
I clung to him, but he shook me off, and the other must have struck me. I can remember no more. Evidently, my little maid, Mary, heard the noise and began screaming out of the window. That brought the police, but the rascals had got away.
What did they take?
That's what I want to know.
But I can't tell you. I'm sure there was nothing of value in my son's trunks, and nothing else is missing.
Any clues, Lestrade?
This sheet of paper. The fellow may have dropped it when Mrs. Maberly tackled him.
It's in my son's handwriting.
And therefore not much value to us, ma'am. Now, if it had been in the burglar's writing...
What rugged common sense. Nonetheless, I should like to see it.
Here you are, then. I always hang on to anything, however trifling. And that's my advice to you, Mr. Holmes. There's always a chance of fingerprints or something.
Thank you, Lestrade. What do you make of this paper?
Well, looks like something he was trying to write. You know, a novel or something. Queer stuff, if you'll pardon me, ma'am.
Well done, Lestrade. In fact, it may be the end of this novel, mayn't it? You notice the number at the top of the page, 245.
Yes, I had noticed that, yes.
And no doubt asked yourself where the odd 244 pages have got to.
Oh, I expect the burglars got those, and much good may it do them.
Yet it seems an odd thing to break into a house in order to steal papers of that kind. Doesn't it suggest anything to you, Inspector?
Yes, it suggests that in their hurry they just grabbed at what came first to hand.
Why should they go to my son's things, Inspector?
Well, ma'am, they found nothing valuable down below, so they tried their luck upstairs. That's how I read it.
Mr. Holmes?
I must think it over. Watson?
Yes?
Will you come over here, please?
Yes, certainly. Well, what is it, Holmes?
Read this fragment of the novel, or whatever it is.
Oh, very well. Face bled considerably from the cuts and blows, but it was nothing to the bleeding of his heart as he saw that lovely face. The face for which he had been prepared to sacrifice his very life, looking out at his agony and humiliation. She smiled, yes, by heaven, she smiled, like the heartless fiend that she is, as he looked up at her. It was at that moment that love died and hate was born. Man must live for something. If it is not for your embrace, my lady, then it shall be for your undoing and my complete revenge. Well, I wouldn't commit burglary for that.
But did you notice the grammar? How the tense changed from the past to present, and the third person to the first?
You're right. As though he'd got so carried away by what he was writing that it seemed as if he was himself mixed up in it.
Precisely. Lestrade is welcome to have this back.
Well, did you find anything in it, Mr. Holmes?
Here you are, Lestrade. No, I don't think there's anything more for me to do, now that the case is in your capable hands. Oh, by the way, Mrs. Mabley, did you say you wished to travel?
It's always been my dream, Mr. Holmes.
Where would you like to go? Cairo, Madeira, Riviera?
Oh, if I had the money, I should go round the world.
Round the world. Quite so. Well, good morning. I may drop you a line in the evening.
Well, what a strange man, Inspector.
You know these clever fellows, ma'am. Always a touch of the, you-know-what, eh?
Now, my dear Watson, we are at the last lap of our little journey.
Well, I hope you're not going to drop me off and tell me that you'll see me in 24 hours and that's all. No. If you're near to a solution, I want to be in on it.
My dear fellow, I shouldn't dream of abandoning you. In any case, I shall feel safer with a witness. It's always advisable in dealing with such ladies as Isadora Klein.
Isa who?
Does the name really convey nothing to you? A man of your experience? There was never a woman to touch her. Pure Spanish. The real blood of the conquistadors. She married the old German sugar king, Klein, and presently found herself the richest as well as the loveliest widow on earth.
You don't say.
There followed an interval of adventure when she pleased her own tastes.
Aha.
Yes, Watson, she had several lovers, and Douglas Mabley was one of the most striking men in London. He was one of them.
Of all I ever heard of Mabley, he was anything but a social butterfly.
Exactly. He was a strong, proud man who gave all and expected all. Their association was no mere adventure to him, but she is the belle dame sans merci of fiction. When her caprice is satisfied, the matter is ended, and if the other party can't take her word for it, she knows how to bring it home to him.
Then it was his own story he was writing.
You're piecing it together now. I hear, also from my friend Langdale Pike, who supplied all the rest, that Isadora Klein is now about to marry the Duke of Lomond, who might almost be her son. His Grace's mother might overlook the age question, but a big scandal would be a different matter. Here we are.
I should like to know the meaning of this intrusion, gentlemen.
I need not explain, madam. I have too much respect for your intelligence to do so. Though I fancy that intelligence has been surprisingly at fault of late.
How so?
In supposing that your hard bullies would frighten me off. Surely no man could take up my profession if it weren't that danger attracts him.
I do not know what you are talking about. What have I to do with hired bullies?
I seem to have overrated your intelligence, madam. Good afternoon. Come, Watson.
Stop! Where are you going?
To Scotland Yard.
Oh, come.
Come and sit down, gentlemen. Let us talk this matter over. I feel that I may be frank with you, Mr. Holmes. You have the feelings of a gentleman. How quick a woman's instinct is to find it out. I will treat you as a friend.
I cannot promise to reciprocate, madam. I am not the law, but I represent justice so far as my feeble powers go. I am ready to listen, and then I will tell you how I will act.
No doubt it was foolish of me to threaten a brave man like yourself.
What was really foolish is that you have placed yourself in the power of rascals who may blackmail you or give you away.
No, I'm not so simple. No one save Barney Stockdale and Susan, his wife.
Susan? Mrs. Mabely's maid?
The same. No one except Stockdale and Susan knows who their employer is. They are good hounds who run silent.
Such hounds also have a way, sooner or later, of biting the hand that feeds them. They'll be arrested for the burglary, you know. The police are onto them.
They will take what comes to them without saying more. That is what they are paid for. I shall not appear in the matter.
Unless I bring you into it.
But you would not. You are a gentleman. It is a woman's secret.
You must give back that stolen manuscript.
See here.
What, in the file? It's full of paper ash.
Shall I give that back? Shall I, Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
You have sealed your fate, madam. You have gone too far this time.
How hard you are. May I tell you the whole story?
I fancy I could tell it to you.
But you must look at it with my eyes, Mr. Holmes. You must understand it from the point of view of a woman who sees all her life's ambition about to be ruined at the last moment. Is such a woman to be blamed if she protects herself?
The original sin was yours.
That I admit. He was a dear boy, Douglas. But he did not fit into my plans. He wanted marriage. Marriage for me, Mr. Holmes, with a penniless commoner. But no, nothing less would serve him. Because I had given, he seemed to think that I still must give, and to him only. It was intolerable. At last I had to make him realize it. But could I have believed that a gentleman would do such a thing then?
What did he do?
He wrote a book. He wrote it to tell his own story. I, of course, was the wolf, and he the lamb. It was all there, under different names, of course. But who in London would have failed to recognize it? What do you say to that, Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
He was within his rights.
It was as if the air of Italy had got into his blood and brought with it the old, cruel Italian spirit. He wrote to me and sent me a copy of his book, so that I might have the torture of anticipation. There were 2 copies, he said. One for me and one for his publisher.
But there must have been 3. There's the one you had stolen from his luggage. That one you burnt down.
Oh, no, don't you see? I knew who was his publisher. I found out that no manuscript had reached him from Italy. And then came Douglas's sudden death. I knew that the manuscript must still be amongst his belongings, and that so long as it existed, there could be no safety for me.
So you had to steal it from his mother's house?
What else could I do, Mr. Holmes? A woman with a scandal hanging over her, and her whole future at stake.
I suppose I shall have to compound a felony as usual. Tell me, Madam Klein, how much does it cost to go round the world? A first class, of course.
Round I do not understand.
Could it be done on £5,000?
Why, I should think certainly.
Capital. Then I think you will sign me a cheque for that amount, and I will see that it reaches Mrs. Mabely. After all the distress she has suffered, you owe her a little change of air.
Oh, but
You broke her son's heart.
God knows. I am sorry for that. Very well, I will pay her.
And, madam?
Yes?
Have a care. Have a care. Even a woman so beautiful as you can't play with sharp-edged tools forever.
without cutting those dainty hands.
In episode 3 of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson were played by Robert Langford and Kenneth Baker. Others in the cast were Margaret Ingalls, Elizabeth Hamilton, Beth Bottler, George Corellan, and Tony Jay.
That's better, Holmes.
Yes. I don't know which I enjoy more, my dear Watson. Our little evening rambles or the agreeable homecoming when they're over. Good fire, the lamp lit, our slippers waiting. Bliss, Watson, bliss. It makes me feel festive. I might even give you a tune.
Huh? You're not going to play that fiddle.
Fiddle? Are you referring to my Stradivarius?
Come in. Ah, Mrs. Hudson. You make us very comfortable.
It's very civil of you to say so, Dr. Watson, I'm sure. Mr. Holmes has a visitor to see you. Shall I show her up?
A lady?
Oh, a real one, sir. Lady Eva Brackwell.
Please show her up at once, Mrs. Hudson.
Very well, sir.
Ah, well, that spared me your fiddle recital, at any rate.
Do you know her, Watson?
Lady Eva Brackwell. Name's familiar. Ah, I know. A debutante. Going to marry...
Lady Eva Brackwell, sir.
How do you do, Lady Eva?
Mr. Holmes.
Allow me to present my friend and associate, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
How do you do? Will you take the basket chair?
Thank you. Mr. Holmes, I must apologize for calling here unannounced. The matter is too urgent for any delay. The fact is that I am engaged to be married to the Earl of Dovercourt in a fortnight's time.
Oh, felicitations.
The 18th, to be exact. Unfortunately...
Yes?
There are some letters. Before I met my future husband, I wrote some letters to a young man, a country squire. Looking back, I realized they were imprudent.
I see. Do I understand that the letters are now in the Earl of Dovercourt's possession?
Oh, no, heaven forbid. But they may soon be.
How so?
Yesterday I had a visit from a Mr. Milverton.
Milverton?
You know him?
Oh, yes, I know Mr. Charles Augustus Milverton. And he knows me.
Yes, now I remember. I told him I should visit you. He smiled. That horrible smile.
Tell me, how much is he asking for the return of your letters?
Then you've seen him already?
No. But from what you've told me of the nature of the letters, coupled with your forthcoming marriage and a visit from Milverton, there is only one conclusion to be drawn.
Mr. Holmes, how he gained possession of them he wouldn't tell me. But he has them. He showed me one. His own words were, if the money is not paid on the 14th, there will certainly be no marriage on the 18th.
But I must ask you again, how much?
£7,000.
£7,000?
You haven't paid him.
No.
What did you tell Milverton?
I said I must have time. I begged him not to come to my father's again. He said he would be prepared to deal through an intermediary, and for no reason at all, I suddenly thought of your name.
You're sure you cannot confide in your future husband?
Absolutely. He has strong views. Mr. Holmes, I had to see you this evening at all costs, because Milverton will be coming here, and you would have been unprepared.
Lady Eva, it is painful for me to have to say this, but from my knowledge of Milverton and his habits, I warn you that there may be no alternative to paying him.
But I can't. I couldn't hope to raise more than half at the most.
Even that might be sufficient, for the moment. Our immediate purpose must be to ensure that nothing arises to prevent the marriage taking place. Then we shall have time to see what can be done next.
Holmes, you're surely not going to... It's blackmail.
Believe me, Watson, knuckling under to a blackmailer is not my preference. But if we refuse him now, we lose all. Lady Eva, you may leave the matter with me. Meanwhile, pray proceed with your wedding arrangements as though nothing were amiss.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Your name came to me like an inspiration.
If Milverton gets in touch with you again, tell him you will only deal through me.
Very well. Good evening, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson.
Good evening, dear lady. Allow me. Holmes, this Milverton.
The worst man in London. When you stand before the serpents in the zoo and see the slithery, gliding, venomous creatures, don't you feel a creeping, shrinking sensation? I've had to do with 50 murderers in my career, but the worst of them never gave me the repulsion I have for this fellow.
But who is he?
He is the king of all the blackmailers. Heaven help the man, and still more the woman, whose secret and reputation come into Milverton's power. With a smiling face and a heart of marble, he'll squeeze and squeeze until he's drained them dry.
How does he work?
He allows it to be known that he's prepared to pay very high sums for letters which will compromise people of wealth or position. He finds plenty of takers, valets, maids, and those artful gentlemen who won the affection of trusting women.
And does he pay well?
Oh, yes. Extremely. I happen to know that he once paid a footman £700 for a note just 2 lines in length. It brought the ruin of a noble family. Everything of that kind that's in the market goes to Milverton eventually. I tell you, Watson, there are hundreds, literally hundreds in this city who would turn white if you mentioned his name to them. None of them knows just when he might put the grip on them. He'll hold a card back for years in order to play it at the moment when the stakes are highest.
But surely the police can do something about him.
Evidence, Watson, evidence. Where is the woman who would risk her own ruin just to get him a few months in prison? He's cunning. A genius in his way. He never blackmails an innocent person. The day he makes that mistake, they'll have him.
I see. Then what...
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Mrs. Hudson?
Mr. Milverton, Mr. Holmes.
Already?
I'll see him at once.
Yes, sir. This way, please, sir. Mr. Milverton.
Well, Mr. Holmes?
Well, Milverton?
This gentleman.
Dr. Watson is my friend and partner.
Oh, I was merely thinking of your client's interests. The matter is so very delicate.
Dr. Watson has already heard the particulars.
So very, very delicate. But shall we proceed to business? I understand you're acting for Lady Eva.
I am.
And has she empowered you to accept my terms?
And the alternative?
My dear sir, it is painful to me to discuss it.
My client will do what I advise.
Which is?
To tell her future husband the whole story and trust to his generosity.
Evidently you don't know the Earl. The letters are sprightly, very sprightly. The lady was a charming correspondent. And I'm sure the Earl of Dovercourt wouldn't appreciate that. Still, since you think it is in your client's best interest that the letters should be placed in the Earl's hands, then I quite agree. It would be foolish to pay so much money to get them back.
She has no alternative. Even £2,000 would be a great drain on her resources.
You are quite right, of course, Mr. Holmes. She hasn't much money. At the same time, you must admit that the occasion of a lady's marriage is a very suitable moment for her friends and relatives to make some little effort on her behalf.
Really?
Imagine, Doctor. Even now they may be in difficulties over the choice of a suitable wedding present. Let me assure them that this little bundle of letters would give her more joy than all the candelabra and butter dishes in London.
It's out of the question, Milverton.
Oh, dear me, how unfortunate. You know, I can't help feeling that ladies in such a situation ought to make some little effort.
The money simply cannot be found. Surely it's better for you to take the 2,000 she can offer. If you ruin her instead, you get nothing.
Ah, now there you make a mistake. I have 8 or 10 other cases, shall we say, maturing. It only needs to be known that I have made a severe example of Lady Eva. I should find the others much more open to reason. And now, gentlemen, I have 1 or 2 more interviews this evening, so if you'll excuse me. You have until the 14th Mr. Holmes.
No, you don't.
No, Watson. Let him go.
You know where to find me. Appledore Towers, Hampstead. Good evening, gentlemen.
You should have let me crack his skull.
It would have done us no good. You can be sure those letters are safe somewhere, with arrangements made for their delivery into the wrong hands if anything happened to him.
I suppose so. But, Holmes, what's to be done?
I don't know. I don't know at all. Are you going out, my dear Watson?
Out? No, I wasn't.
As you pass the tobacconist, you might tell him to send me up a pound of the strongest shag. This is more than any three-pipe problem. But the answer will come. Let us hope it doesn't take too long, that's all.
Great heavens, Holmes. I wonder you don't suffocate.
I suppose it is rather thick, now you mention it.
You must have smoked the whole blessed tin. What's all this get-up? And a moustache? You supposed to be some sort of workman?
She was as beautiful as a butterfly and a parade as a queen. Was a pretty little Polly Perkins of the Paddington Green.
Holmes.
Name of Escort, Governor, rising young plumber, and a bachelor still.
And for whose benefit is all this?
For the housemaid at Appledore Towers, Hampstead.
Milverton's place?
I only hope she's susceptible to a little charm.
Charm? You, Holmes?
You'd hardly call me a marrying man, would you?
I would not.
Still, needs must when the devil drives. And Milverton is all the devil I need to spur me on. Let us hope that late though the hour is, I may be able to persuade the young lady to make an assignation with me on Hampstead Heath in the not-too-distant future.
Only a few hours ago you were carrying on about unscrupulous men winning the affections of trusting women.
Now, before you begin lecturing me about my scruples, let me assure you that it is a most necessary step. You and I are going to burgle Milverton's house, and there's no time to lose in discovering how and when to do so. Desperate situations call for desperate measures. So, Watson, wish me luck with my courting.
Oh, very well. With that poor girl.
Poor me, I rather fancy. So far, Watson, so good. This is Milverton's study. Turn up the lamp a little.
Better take care, Holmes.
It's all right. He'll be at dinner at the other end of the house. Always is at this time, so my little informant assures me.
Oh, you know, Holmes, it really is a bit thick.
My dear Watson, I've walked out with her evening after evening. I've talked with her. Dear, those talks.
Serve you right. And now you're going to drop her like a hot brick, I suppose.
She's told me all I need to know. She's got the watchdog under lock and key on the off chance that I might be paying her one of my evening visits. Faithful little Aggie. Perhaps a box of handkerchiefs through the post, wouldn't you say?
I'd say you were an out-and-out bounder.
And then you'll rejoice to know that her affections are noticeably prejudiced towards my rival, the butcher's boy. I fancy the young lady will survive the disappointment.
Oh, well. And we'd better get on. Here's the tool bag.
You know, I've always thought I'd have made a thoroughly efficient criminal. Isn't it a beauty? A first-class, up-to-date burgling outfit. Nickel-plated jemmy, diamond-tipped glass cutter, skeleton keys. Every modern improvement called for by the march of civilization. Now, Watson, just for safety's sake, you stand by the door and listen. If you hear the slightest sound, get behind the curtains as quickly as you can, and keep still.
Very well. Not a sound just now.
He likes his food, does the master. Never gets up from table before 9, I'm told.
Not quite 8:30. You think you can do it?
Fortunately, either Milverton's too mean to buy a more up-to-date safe, or he's becoming careless. One way or the other, he's left our task much easier. Not quite my fastest time, but a good attempt.
Letters! Look, bundles of them.
Possibly his whole hoard. Into the bag with them.
Are you going to take the lot?
I fancy we shall be doing a number of people a service.
Come into my...
Someone's coming. It's Milverton. Holmes, the safe door.
Leave it. Behind the curtain. Quickly.
You're late. I said 8:30.
I'm sorry, sir. I came as soon as I could get away.
Never mind, never mind. Let's hope you prove worth the waiting for, eh?
Yes, sir.
That countess must have been a hard mistress to you, I dare say.
Sir.
Well, then, here's your chance to get even with her, eh? Ay, bless me, girl, what are you shivering about? You'll probably be a rich woman in a minute or two. Come. Let's see that pretty face under the veil, eh?
I'm all right, sir.
Oh, very well, then. Let's get to business. I understand you've got 5 letters written by the Countess d'Albert, which you think will interest me.
Yes.
You want to sell them? I want to buy them. So far, so good. All there is to do is to fix the price.
That is all.
Of course, I shall have to inspect the letters first. You have them there.
Yes.
And I may as well inspect you at the same time. Yes, I fancy you are a pretty little thing under all this. Great heavens. You?
Then you remember me, Milverton.
But of course, dear lady. Forgive me. It was some months ago, and in that veil, I confess...
You have rather special reasons for remembering me.
A modest financial transaction, purely in the way of business.
Modest, did you say?
Oh, come now, Matt. I ask you, why was I driven to such extremities in your case? By your own obstinacy. I assure you I did my very best to accommodate you. But every man must, in the end, conduct his business how he can.
Business?
I put my price well within your means. By turning your diamonds into paste, you could have met it easily. But no, you would be obstinate. You would not pay.
You killed my husband by sending those letters to him.
I killed?
Oh, I admit I was not fit to lace his boots for him. All the same, I humbled myself before you. I begged and prayed for your mercy. You laughed in my face, just as you are trying to laugh now. But I am going to kill you.
Dear lady, that revolver. Do be careful, I beg you.
Charles Augustus Milverton, what have you to say to me now?
Say? Why, only that if I were to raise my voice, my servants would be here within a moment. I could have you arrested for breaking into my house with a weapon, but, oh, never fear. I will make allowance for your natural anger. Leave the house at once, and nothing more will be said.
Oh, no, Milverton. It will not be so easy as that. I came here to make sure that you will ruin no more lives as you ruined mine. I came to free the world of a poisonous thing.
No.
Yes, Milverton!
Great heavens! Who was she? Should I have grabbed her, Holmes?
Let her go. Quickly, Watson. The rest of the letters. We haven't a moment to lose.
Holmes! Holmes, someone's coming.
The French window. As fast as you can. Not without you. That's almost all. Hurry, Watson.
Right. Across the lawn. This way.
Make for the garden wall. Action over.
Hey, you! Watch out! Someone's coming across the lawn! Go on, man! Get over! Stop, you! Yeah, I've got you! Oh, no, you haven't! Oh, I'm sorry. That's fixed him. I've got right, Holmes. I'm coming!
Mr. Holmes? Dr. Watson?
Inspector Lestrade, good morning.
Caught you at last. Just missed you at Baker Street. But Mrs. Hudson said you'd gone for a stroll down Regent Street.
Quite correctly, as you see, Lestrade. But what brings you after us?
You're very busy, Mr. Holmes.
Not exactly. Is Scotland Yard in difficulties again?
Well, I just thought if you had nothing particular on hand, you might care to assist us. Remarkable business last night at Hampstead.
Dear me, what was it?
Murder. fellow by the name of Milverton.
Who? What, the murderer?
No. He was the one done in.
Oh.
Mind you, we've had our eye on him for some time. Suspected of blackmailing.
Really?
Yes. Well, he was shot dead last night at his house. Safe rifled.
Ah, a burglar, you think?
I reckon so. Some banknotes left there untouched and a desk drawer full of them now. You asked me, someone was after those papers of his. A couple of gents of position, most likely.
Oh, then it was murderers in the plural.
Definitely. The first was a bit too active, but over the garden wall as quick as you say knife. The second wasn't so quick off the mark.
No?
A bit of a struggle with the gardener before it got clear.
Any description of this second man?
Middle-sized, strongly built, square jaw, thick neck, moustache.
Rather vague. Why, it might be a description of Dr. Watson. You see every sign of guilt, I'm afraid.
Hell, now, that'd be a thing, Doctor, eh?
So Milverton's dead, Lestrade. I knew something of him. One of the most dangerous men in London, I often thought.
You'll help us investigate it, Mr. Holmes?
You know, it is my view that there are certain crimes which the law cannot touch, and which, therefore, justify a measure of private revenge.
Yes, but murder...
You're quite right, of course. Murder must be punished, but I have made up my mind, Lestrade. For once, my sympathies are with the criminals, rather than with the victim. No, I will not handle the case.
Well, you disappoint me, Mr. Holmes. I should have thought this was just the sort of thing would have interested you.
Oh, it did. Does. I can see, however, that as usual your superlative instincts are leading you precisely on the track of the two men you want. You'll distinguish yourself in your usual way without help from me.
Oh, yes, it's very good of you to say that, Mr. Holmes. Still, I can flatter myself, you're right. We have their descriptions. We have their footprints in the garden. If they were to walk past us here now, I reckon I'd recognise them quick enough.
Capital.
Well, I'd better be getting on to the yard. Nippy this morning, quite a frost last night.
Yeah, there was.
Soon be Christmas. Good day to you, gentlemen.
Good day.
Good day, Lestrade.
Oh,
my dear Watson.
Oh, you sailed pretty close to the wind, didn't you?
No danger at all. Something tells me there's going to be another unclosed file lying on Lestrade's desk for a long time to come.
I hope you're right.
Meanwhile, let us resume our stroll. But here we are at our destination already.
The photographers? What for, Holmes?
The contemplation of nature's skillful handiwork. Look there, in the window. The picture down at the right.
Holmes! It is she from last night.
I thought at the time I'd seen her somewhere recently. Only at breakfast this morning I recalled this shop window. And to think, Watson, that Lestrade stood just there with all three persons involved within his sight. I fear I shall never have the satisfaction of telling him.
Look, Holmes. It's got her title printed underneath. Great heavens! She's a...
No, my dear Watson. Don't speak it. Now that I've satisfied my curiosity, let us endeavour to put the noble lady's name out of our minds by talking of other things, while we resume our walk in this delightful winter sunshine.
Remember your instructions, Watson. Do nothing at all until your cue.
All right, Holmes. Look. Those loungers going to open the carriage door for us. They're trying to push each other away. Holmes, this is going to be a fight.
Oh, dear me. The poor lady will be jostled. I must protect her. Make way, you hear, my men. Keep back from this lady.
Who are you, Nosey?
Kindly show respect for my cloth.
Never mind your cloth. You watch your nose.
My name is Watson, Dr. Watson, and it was my privilege to share the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I will tell you what happened concerning a certain scandal in Bohemia. or rather Holmes's attempt to avert one, in which he nearly lost his reputation over an opera singer. You'll see what I mean in a moment. I've seen little of Holmes lately. My marriage had drifted us away from each other. I was seized with a keen desire to see Holmes again. I went without formality up to the chamber which had formerly been in part my own, and to my embarrassment found that he was engaged with a client, a man who could not have been less than 6 feet 6 inches in height, with the chest and limbs of a Hercules. I stammered my apologies and prepared to leave, but Holmes, with as little concern as if I'd been sharing his apartment still, waved me to close the door and characteristically set me to work.
Adler. Watson, kindly look her up in my index.
Yes, certainly, Holmes.
Thank you. Pray continue, Your Majesty.
Your Majesty? I am the Count von Kron.
Your Majesty had not even spoken before I was aware that I was addressing Wilhelm Göstreich Sigismund von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Cassel-Paulstein, and hereditary King of Bohemia.
You are right, Herr Holmes. I am the King.
Then, if Your Majesty would condescend to state your case...
You understand, I am not accustomed to doing such business in my own person. So I have come incognito from Prague for the purpose of consulting you.
Then pray consult. But first of all, let us elucidate one point. The friend who has become involved with this woman, Irene Adler...
is, myself.
Precisely.
Herr Holmes, the circumstances are of great delicacy. It is necessary to take every precaution to avoid an immense scandal.
Quite so. Watson?
Yes, Holmes. Here we are. Adler, Irene, born New Jersey, 1858. The principal soprano, La Scala, Milan. Prima donna, Imperial Opera of Warsaw, retired from operatic stage, now living in London.
Your Majesty, as I understand, became entangled with this young person, wrote her some compromising letters, and is now desirous of getting them back.
Precisely.
Was there a secret marriage? Any legal undertaking?
Nothing of the sort.
Then how can she prove the authenticity of the letters?
My handwriting.
Forgery.
My private notepaper.
Stolen.
My seal.
Imitated.
My photograph.
Bought.
We were both in the photograph.
Oh, dear. That is very bad.
I was mad. Insane. It was 5 years ago when I was only crown prince.
It must be recovered.
It must.
I fear Your Majesty must be prepared to pay whatever she is asking.
She will not sell. Your Majesty, what does she propose to do with the photograph? Ruin me, of course. Oh, surely you know I am about to be married. To Clotilde Lothman von Saxe-Meiningen, second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. You may know the strict principles of her family. A shadow of doubt over my conduct would bring the matter to an end. And Irene Adler? Rather than I should marry another woman, there are no lengths to which she will not go. On Monday, my betrothal is to be proclaimed. On that day also, the photograph will reach my fiancé's hand.
Monday? Your Majesty will, of course, remain in London.
I shall be all anxiety.
Then, as to money...
there are 300 pounds in gold and 700 pounds in notes.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Here is your receipt.
Thank you.
By the way, what is the size of this photograph?
Size? Why, it is large. I think you say a cabinet?
Just so. And Mademoiselle's address?
Briony Lodge.
Briony Lodge?
Serpentine Avenue.
Serpentine Avenue.
St. John's Wood.
St. John's Wood. Thank you. Then good night, Your Majesty.
Good night, Herr Holmes.
I trust that we shall soon have good news for you.
Holmes had no difficulty in persuading me to throw in my lot with him, as a result of which I was seated in his parlour all the following afternoon, waiting vainly for him to meet me there as arranged. It wasn't until 4 o'clock, the parlour door opened and admitted a drunken-looking groom with an inflamed side-whiskered face and disreputable stable clothes. I was about to expostulate when the groom suddenly burst out laughing. Oh, dear me, Watson, what an angry face. Oh, Holmes, You'll never guess what I've been doing. I can't imagine.
There's a wonderful sympathy and Freemasonry among horsey men. Make them think you're one of them, and you will soon find out all there is to know.
Well?
I've been lending a helping hand to some of the ostlers of Serpentine Mews, St. John's Wood. Yes, in exchange for rubbing down a few horses, I received the sum of 2pence, a glass of half and half, 2 fills of shag tobacco, and as much information as I could desire about Miss Irene Adler.
Bravo, Holmes. What about her, then?
Oh, she's turned all the men's heads down in that part. Daintiest thing under a bonnet on this planet, they say. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, drives out at 5 every day, and returns at 7 sharp for dinner. She has only one male visitor, but he calls every day. He's dark, dashing, and handsome, and he's a lawyer of the Inner Temple named Godfrey Norton.
What's Norton got to do with the case?
That's what I was asking myself when the gentleman himself drove up in a hansom and got down at Bryony Lodge. He appeared to be in a great hurry, shouted to the cab to wait, ran to the door, and brushed past the maid with the air of a man who was thoroughly at home there.
Perhaps she's his name.
After half an hour, out he dashed again. I quickly got near enough to hear him tell his cabby to drive like the devil to St. Monica's Church in the Edgware Road. Well, off they raced. And almost immediately, a neat little landau came up to the front door with the coachman with his coat only half buttoned and his tie under his ear, as though he'd had only about 30 seconds in which to get ready. And then, Watson, the front door opened again, and out she came.
Holmes,
I only caught a moment's glimpse, but she was a lovely woman, Watson, with a face that a man might die for. Yes. Well, she ran out in as great haste as her visitor before her.
You don't mean to say...
Yes, off they tore for the church of St. Monica's.
Yes.
But this was too good to miss. Luckily for me, just then another cab came into the street. The driver looked twice at such a shabby fare as myself. But I offered him double the fare if he could get me to St. Monica's in time. That made up his mind for him, and I don't think I've ever had a faster drive.
Great heavens, Holmes. This beats the best.
At any rate, they beat me. The cab and the landau were outside the church door when I arrived. I paid my man and hurried into the church. There, in front of the altar, stood 3 people. The 2 I'd followed, and a surpliced clergyman who seemed to be arguing with them. Suddenly, one of them spotted me, and all 3 turned round. To my surprise, Mr. Godfrey Norton came hurrying towards me.
Oh, thank heavens. Come. What? Come along.
Why? What's up?
Oh, come on, man. Don't stand there gaping. There's only 3 minutes or he won't be legal.
Come again?
Well, the vicar wouldn't marry us without a witness. Well, now you're here. We've got one. Come along.
Oh, all right, Gov, if you say so. So, imagine me, Watson, having to stand there in this get-up and mumble responses. Yes, and vouch for all sorts of things I knew nothing about, and generally assist in the secure tying up of Irene Adler, spinster, to Godfrey Norton, bachelor.
Oh, Holmes, I'd have given anything to be there.
You see that?
Well, yes.
It's the sovereign the bride gave me for my pains.
Yeah.
I mean to wear it on my watch chain in memory of the occasion. All the same, Watson, this seemed to menace my plans seriously.
Quite.
It looked as though the couple might make an immediate departure, which would take them out of my reach. However, they separated at the church door.
Separated?
Yes. He ordered his cab to the temple, and I heard her tell him she would drive in the park at 5 as usual. Then she drove off home again.
Extraordinary way to go on.
Perhaps. At all events, this sudden marriage means that we cannot afford to wait longer before we act. Now, I shall want your cooperation this evening.
Delighted.
By the by, do you mind breaking the law?
You know me, Holmes. Anything for a good cause.
Oh, the cause is excellent. Now, it's nearly 5. When Miss Irene, or rather Madame, returns from her drive at 7, we must be at Bryony Lodge to meet her.
What then?
You must leave that to me. I've already arranged what is to occur. You must not interfere, come what may. You understand that?
I am to be neutral.
To do nothing whatever. There will probably be some small unpleasantness. Do not join in. You will see me being conveyed into the house.
Conveyed?
Yes. 4 or 5 minutes afterwards, the sitting room window will open, and you are to station yourself close to it.
Yes.
You will be able to see me clearly. Now, you're to watch me.
Yes, Holmes, yes.
When I raise my hand, so,
yes.
You will throw this object into the room and shout, "Fire!" for all you're worth.
What is it, Holmes? It looks like a cigar.
Rather a formidable weed, my dear doctor. No, it's an ordinary plumber's smoke rocket, fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting. See?
Yes, I see.
Your task is confined to that alone. When you raise your cry of fire, it'll be taken up by quite a number of people. You may then walk to the end of the street, and I will rejoin you in 10 minutes. I hope I've made everything clear.
Allow me, Holmes. Especially in these parts. Guardsmen, nursemaids, idlers, a bit of everything.
A microcosm of our poor world, my dear sir. Never mind them, Watson. Concentrate on trying to deduce where that photograph is hidden.
Oh, well, indeed, Holmes. Perhaps she carries it on her. Come to think of it, the king said it was cabinet size, much too big to carry about. He's had her waylaid twice. Could always happen again. I know. She's put it in the hands of her banker or her lawyer.
I doubt it. Women are naturally secretive, and they like to do their own secreting. She could trust herself to look after it, but who knows what influence the king might manage to bring to bear on her men of business. Besides, she's resolved to use it within a few days. It must be where she can lay her hands on it.
Her house? Oh, it's been burgled twice.
They didn't know how to look.
How will you look, Holmes?
I will not look. I will get her to show me. She won't be able to. See, here's her carriage. Now remember your instructions, Watson. Do nothing at all until your cue.
All right, Holmes. Look. Those loungers going to open the carriage door for her. They're trying to push each other away. Holmes, this is going to be a fight.
Oh, dear me. The poor lady will be jostled. I must protect her. Make way, I say. Make way, sir.
Get out of the way.
Make way, do you hear, my men? Keep back from this lady.
Who are you now, Vinny?
Kindly show respect for my cloth.
Never mind your cloth. You watch your nose.
I should have done that. Out, come on,
The poor old gentleman, not hurt.
He's dead.
No, there's life in him.
Oh, he's a brave fellow.
They'd have had that lady's purse and watch if it hadn't been for him. They were a gang and a rough one, too.
Well, he can't lie in the street. May we bring him in, ma'am?
Surely, bring him into the sitting room. There is a comfortable sofa. This way, please.
Come on, mate.
Oh, dear me.
Are you feeling any better now?
My nose. If only I could breathe. Perhaps the window open.
Oh, yes, of course. I hope that will make it easier for you. Just let me look now.
Oh,
what?
Merciful heaven behind you! Smoke!
Smoke! Oh!
Fire! House on fire! Quickly, madam, save yourself!
Oh, in a moment.
Oh, never mind your valuables. It is of the utmost importance that you... Oh! I believe there's no danger after all.
None. Then what?
Some child's game misfired, I think. There's some sort of firework rocket that has chanced to come through your window. See, there. I've managed to extinguish it.
I see.
It's all right, my friend. The fire is out. No cause for alarm. Oh, dear me.
so much excitement. I do believe, though, it has made me quite forget my own discomfort. Yes, the pain is gone now. I will trouble your hospitality no further.
Oh, well, then I shall...
No. I can find my own way, thank you. A good evening to you, madam. A very good evening.
Good evening.
You did it very nicely, my dear doctor. Very nicely indeed.
You got the photograph then, Holmes?
I know what it is.
How did you find out?
She showed me. I told you she would.
Oh, come on, Holmes. You know I'm waiting to hear.
Well, to begin with, you realized that all those people in the street were engaged by me for the evening.
Yes, I had guessed as much.
When they started their quarrel, I rushed forward, fell down, and became a piteous spectacle.
I should think so. You were bleeding.
Oh, I had a little moist red paint in my hand to clap onto my face. It's an old trick.
Holmes, I saw all that myself, but later you...
Later they carried me in as instructed. They laid me on a couch in her sitting room. In the sitting room, mark you, which was the room I had suspected all along.
Yes.
And when I gasped for air, she had to open the window, giving you your chance.
Yes, but how did that help you?
It was all important. When a woman thinks her house is on fire, her instinct is to rush to the thing she values most. Our heroine today responded beautifully. She rushed for her most precious possession at this time, that photograph.
Where was it?
In a recess behind a sliding panel, just above the right-hand bell pull. I caught a glimpse of it as she half blew it out. When I shouted out that the fire was a false alarm, she put it back hastily, and I left.
Oh, why on earth didn't you grab it there and then?
A little over-precipitance might have ruined everything. Besides, it might be a satisfaction to His Majesty to get it back with his own hand. We'll call there with him tomorrow. We'll be shown into the sitting room to wait for the lady. But it's probable that when she comes in, she may find neither us nor the photograph. We'll be there at 8 in the morning. She won't be up, so we shall have a clear field. Now, here's our door, Watson. Oh, got your key?
Yes.
Good night, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
What? Who was that?
Well, that boy.
I've heard that voice before. I wonder who the deuce it could have been.
You've really got hopes, Herr Holmes.
I have hopes.
Then come, I am all impatience to hear.
Your Majesty, Irene Adler is married.
Married? When? Holmes?
She married an English lawyer named Norton.
But she could not love him.
I'm in hopes that she does.
In hopes that she... Why?
Because it will spare your Majesty all fear of future annoyance. If the lady loves her husband, she does not love your Majesty. If she doesn't love your Majesty, there is no reason why she should interfere in your Majesty's plans.
Yes, it is true. And yet not to love me. She was not in my own station. But had she been so, what a queen she would have made. Is this the place? Yes, indeed, Your Majesty. This is Brownie Lodge.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Were you called to see Miss Irene?
Sherlock Holmes, I believe.
Yes, I am, Mr. Holmes.
My mistress told me you were likely to call. She left this morning with her husband.
Left?
By the 5:15 train from Charing Cross. For the continent.
Do you mean to say that she has left England?
Never to return, sir.
Holmes, the papers. We must search. Step aside, my good woman. We demand to pass in.
My instructions were to let you do so, gentlemen.
Then it means that all is lost.
I think we'll go in all the same, if you please.
Certainly, sir. You are free to examine anything you wish, gentlemen.
Thank you.
If you will just ring when you are ready to leave.
Very well.
What's the use, Holmes? She'll have taken the picture with her.
I fear so. But we'd better see for ourselves. Now, this is the sitting room.
I'm ruined.
Here is the panel. I think she operated it so.
Empty?
No. There are... there's a letter addressed to me. And a photograph.
Photograph? Let me see. Is it the one?
I'm afraid not.
Show me. It is herself, alone. I do not understand. Herr Holmes, I wish to know the meaning of this.
Your Majesty is no more in the dark than I. Perhaps the contents of this letter may afford some illumination.
What's it say, Herr Holmes?
I think I'd better let it tell you in its own words. Listen. My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, you really
did it very well. You took me in completely. Until after the alarm of fire, I had not a suspicion. But then, when I found how I'd given myself away, I began to think. You see, I'd been warned against you months ago. I'd been told that if the king employed an agent, it would most certainly be you. And yet, you made me reveal what you wanted to know. How could I be suspicious of such a dear, kind old clergyman? But you know, I've been trained as an actor myself. Male costume is nothing new to me. I often take advantage of the freedom it gives, so I keep a suit of boy's clothing handy. The moment you had left, I put it on and hurried after you. And so I was able to follow you to your door and discover that I rarely was an object of interest to the celebrated Mr. Sherlock Holmes. It was rather imprudent of me, I suppose, but I just could not resist passing and wishing you good night. When he heard my news, my husband agreed that the best plan would be to fly from so formidable an antagonist. So, you will find the nest empty when you call. As to the photograph, your client may rest in peace. I've even set another photograph which he might care to possess. I love and am loved by a better man than he, and I remain, dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Very truly yours, Irene Norton, née Adler.
Oh, what a woman! What a woman! Did I not tell you how quick and resolute she was? Would she not have been an admirable queen? Is it not a pity she was not on my level?
From what I have seen of the lady, she seems indeed to be on a very different level from your Majesty.
What is it?
I am sorry I have not been able to bring your Majesty's business to a more successful conclusion.
Oh, on the contrary, my dear sir, nothing could be more successful. I know she will keep her word. The photograph is as safe now as if it were in the fire.
I am glad to hear your Majesty say so.
I am immensely indebted to you, Herr Holmes.
Then there is no more to be done in the matter. I have the honor to wish you a very good morning. Come, Watson. No doubt your relish for all that is bizarre and outside the conventions will move you to chronicle this little adventure for your admiring public.
You just see, Holmes. You try to stop me.
Oh, I shouldn't dream of it, my dear fellow. But be sure to tell them how the best plans of Sherlock Holmes were beaten by a woman's wit, and that he, who used to make merry over the cleverness of women, will think twice before he does so in future. You understand, Watson?
Perfectly, Holmes. Perfectly.
A scandal in Bohemia was one one of the many stories of Sherlock Holmes written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. My name, my real name, is Norman Shelley. My old friend Carlton Hobbs played Sherlock Holmes. I was Dr. Watson. Holmes. I was Dr. Watson. Holmes. I was Dr. Watson. Holmes.
Here we are, Mr. Bartell, my humble lodgings. Yeah, it's getting a little dark, so I'll just light the gas. There we are.
This is amazing, Inspector Lestrade. You seem to have a miniature crime museum here in your living room.
That's right, Mr. Bartell. All of the items before you I obtained from Scotland Yard, with their permission, of course. Most are connected with the case Mr. Holmes and I were involved in solving. Oh, look here. This is the unsigned arrest warrant from the Hound of the Baskerville. And here is the jacket Cadogan West wore in the Bruce Portington plans. But my pride and joy is this, sir. The rifle used by Colonel Sebastian Moran in the case of the empty house.
It's quite a collection from Sherlock Holmes' cases.
True, sir. It's just my way of keeping a little respect for Mr. Holmes and remembering each case I was on. But don't think I'm putting Mr. Holmes up on a pedestal, Mr. Bartell. I'm well aware of the mixed feelings towards me. Look here, in this bookcase.
Well, there are at least 50 Strand magazines here.
Yes, almost all with Sherlock Holmes cases written by Dr. Watson. Let me show you something. If I may quote from the Boscombe Valley Mystery in this issue of the Strand, Dr. Watson calls me a lean, ferret-like man, furtive and sly-looking. Not a very pleasant description of me, Mr. Bartell. However, I've also been told that Mr. Holmes has called me the best of the professionals. So you see, Mr. Bartell, I get it both ways. Well, enough of that. I want to thank you for telling me about the murder by moonlight case. I missed that one. Do you know of any others I might be interested in? Just for the record, of course.
Let me think. Have you heard the case of the Coptic compass by any chance?
That was in an issue of the Strand 6 months ago. I missed that one. Been looking for a copy in the used bookstores. Tell you what, I'll light the fire and get us something to drink while you tell me all about it.
Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo present the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring Nigel Bruce as Dr. Watson and Tom Conway as Sherlock Holmes. Well, here it is, Saturday night again, and time for our weekly visit with that excellent host and incomparable storyteller, Dr. Watson. I'm sure he's waiting for us in the old familiar study, so let's waste no time in joining him.
Good evening, Mr. Bell. You're punctual to the minute, as usual.
You bet I am. When it's time for Dr. Watson to tell a new adventure he had with the immortal Sherlock Holmes, I'm not going to miss a second.
Nice of you to say so, my boy. Draw up your usual chair and make yourself comfortable.
Before I sit down, Dr. Watson, do you mind if I take a look at the old metal case on the mantelpiece? It wasn't there last week.
No, I placed it there because it played a prominent part in tonight's story. You see, it's a memento of yet another encounter that Sherlock Holmes and I had with the arch-villain of London crime, Professor Moriarty.
But what is it, Dr. Watson? It looks like an old compass.
That's exactly what it is, my boy.
But there are no numerals on it. Just these strange figures around the dial.
Oh, those apparent hieroglyphics helped us to solve one of the most diabolical murders that we ever encountered. I call it the adventure of the half-eaten apple, the Coptic compass, and the unclothed corpse.
I can hardly wait, Dr.
Well, I'm sure you'll wait long enough to have a word with our listeners now, won't you, Mr. Bell?
Right. Men, aren't you sick and tired of hair preparations which leave your hair looking and feeling greasy? When you run your hand over your hair, does your hair feel sticky and dirty? Does grease come off on your hand? If so, then now's the time to change to Kreml Hair Tonic. The first thing you'll notice about Kreml is how clean it smells, how clean it looks and feels on your hair and scalp. When you use Kreml, you can run your hand over your hair. And honestly, men, it's a pleasure. Not a trace of that greasy, sticky feeling. Yet you can't beat Kreml to keep hair neatly groomed. You see, Kreml contains a special combination of hair grooming ingredients which is found in no other hair tonic. That's why it keeps hair in place longer, with such a natural, well-groomed appearance. So, men, let Kreml give your hair this handsome, clean-cut look which is bound to make a hit, both on the job and with the ladies. Kreml, Kreml Hair Tonic. Now, Dr. Watson, how's about the compass, the half-eaten apple, and
the unclothed corpse? Well, Mr. Bell, the adventure began on a November morning shortly after the turn of the century. Holmes, seldom one to indulge in exercise for its own sake, had displayed a rare burst of activity and joined me in a stroll through Regent's Park. Just before noon, we retraced our steps, and as we turned the corner into Baker Street, I nearly collided with a tall, well-dressed man walking in the other direction.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Oh, that's quite all right, sir.
Excuse me. Aren't you Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
I am.
I'm Major Stanley.
Indeed. You're a little early for our appointment, Major Stanley. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Dr. Watson? I am early, Mr. Holmes, and when your housekeeper told me you were still out, I decided to take a stroll.
Then let's walk back together, and perhaps you can tell me your problem as we go.
It isn't exactly my problem, Mr. Holmes. You see, I made the count to the Maharaja of Kasul.
Oh, really? It's a very interesting job, I should imagine.
Yes, it
is. I was in India myself, Peshawar and further north. I was once attacked
Quite, Watson. Some other time, don't you think?
Oh, sorry, Holmes.
The Maharaja's problem would seem pressing since his emissary has been so eager to reach us. Please continue, Major Stanley. Mr. Holmes, have you ever heard of the Star of Kasul? A fabulously valuable diamond, isn't it? Yes. It's the treasure of the Maharaja's collection. At the moment, it's in the vaults of the Bank of England.
No, that's the best place for it, I should say. There have been several jewel robberies lately.
Yes, so I've been told, and that's why I've come to you, Mr. Holmes. You see, the Maharaja has come to England to have his portrait painted by Sargent. Your problem becomes apparent, Major Stanley. When this portrait is painted, the Star of Kasul will no doubt be set in the Maharaja's turban. And you quite justifiably feel concerned about the jewel's safety. Exactly, Mr. Holmes. It must be cleverly and closely guarded on its daily journey from the vaults to the Maharaja's suite and back.
Well, hardly sounds like a job for you, Holmes.
No, Major Stanley. Without wishing to appear conceited, I may say that such a routine matter is rather outside my scope. The Maharaja insists on having you, Mr. Holmes. I assure you his fee would be princely. Here we are at 221B. Come in, Major Stanley. We'll discuss the matter further, if you like.
Mrs. Hudson, we're back.
Oh, very well, Doctor. Oh, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Mrs. Hudson?
There were two gentlemen waiting to see you. Said they had an appointment, but they've gone. Said they'd come back later.
Did they leave their names?
No, sir, they didn't.
That's odd. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
Aye, sir.
Let's go upstairs, shall we, Major Stanley?
Very well, Doctor. Regarding your problem, Major Stanley, it occurs to me that Humphrey Pedder might be a good man to see. Humphrey Pedder? Yes, I'm not personally acquainted with him, but I'm told that he specializes in the more physical aspects of detective work. The Maharaj will be very distressed if you refuse him, Mr. Holmes. Naturally, I wish to... I'm sorry, Major Stanley. I've made my decision. I can't handle the case. See Mr. Pedder if you will. But Mr. Holmes, can't we sit down and talk about it at least?
Yes, Holmes. After all, there's no need to be rude.
I'm afraid not. Good day, Major. I've heard you were eccentric, Mr. Holmes, but I didn't know how eccentric.
Holmes, what on earth's the matter with you? You ask him up, and then you won't even let him into the room.
For an excellent reason, Watson. Come inside. Look, there on the floor.
Great heavens.
I could hardly let the emissary of a Raja walk into a room containing a corpse, and an unclothed one at that. Lift the blanket off the face, Watson.
Right, you are, huh? There.
Oh, Doctor, the poor man.
Is that the face of one of the men that called here?
Aye, sir, it is.
Cover it again, Watson.
I saw the other one leave, sir. He said his friend had already left. Oh, I never dreamed...
This one you saw leaving, was he carrying anything? A bundle, perhaps?
No, sir, he wasn't.
Could you describe him?
Well, he was tall and thin, and he had a high...
If he was carrying no bundle, where are the corpse's clothes? There's no sign of them in here.
What a shocking thing, sir. A murder right in your living room. Will I send for the police?
Definitely not, Mrs. Hudson. And please keep this to yourself.
Aye, sir.
When a corpse is deposited on my own carpet, there's a certain point of honor in being able to present the police with a complete explanation when I do call them in. That'll be all, Mrs. Hudson.
All right, sir. What a terrible thing.
Holmes, this is incredible. Why leave a corpse here, and why unclothed?
The obvious reason to remove clothing would be to make identification difficult.
Then how did the murderer get the clothes out of here? Mrs. Hudson said that he wasn't carrying anything.
We have many other questions to answer, old chap. The knife wound in the heart gives us no clue, I'm afraid. But observe the singular collection of objects that are lying beside the body.
Well, let's have a look at them. A railway ticket, a funny-looking compass,
and an apple that has been bitten into.
The corpse has protruding teeth. I bet you that he didn't make the bite in this apple. Holmes, these must be the murderer's tooth marks.
If you're correct, Watson, our murderer is an extraordinary man indeed.
Well, why do you say that?
Because if you look closely, you'll notice the interesting fact that this bite was made by 2 sets of upper teeth.
You're the one who no mistake, Professor Moriarty. 2 sets of upper teeth. Well, that was the best touch.
Yes, Carter. I must confess it was neat. Simple, of course. You start the bite with your upper teeth, reverse the apple, and conclude the bite. Yes, simple. But I trust also somewhat disconcerting for the great Sherlock Holmes. Our past encounters have given me an insight into his very unusual mind.
I'd like to have watched his face when he walked in there, Professor.
So would I. But the next 24 hours will give me little leisure, I fear. I must arrange for a certain matter concerning a change of ownership in the Star of Kasul. This should be a fascinating game.
But the old compass, the railway ticket.
Carter, with your somewhat limited cranial development, it must be hard for you to absorb the subtler points in such a plan, but surely its basic purpose is obvious. Sherlock Holmes is about to be engaged by the Maharaja to guard the jewel. I had to divert his attention, so I perpetrated an intriguing murder on his own doorstep and surrounded the corpse with meaningless and completely unrelated objects which I knew would torment his curiosity and keep him off my trail.
And that corpse would take some explaining to the police, too, Professor.
Yes, that's why I placed it there. It puts him in an acutely embarrassing position. He has to try and solve the case or become the laughingstock of London.
It's one of your neatest jobs, Professor.
Oh, I won't say that, Carter. But I'm quite sure that I've posed a problem that Sherlock Holmes will be totally unable to resist. I can't resist this problem, Watson. No fee on earth could make me bother with the safety of a mere diamond when such a puzzle presents itself.
On my soul, you talk rather as though you were settling down to a game of chess. You've got to solve this problem, Holmes, or else it's going to put you in a ridiculous position with Scotland Yard. And just think if it got into the papers.
I shall reserve my imagination for the problem posed. The question of the apple is, of course, obvious.
Well, I suppose all you have to do is to find a man with 2 sets of false upper teeth. Very simple.
Quite. The only way such an imprint could be left is to take a half bite with the upper teeth, reverse the apple, and repeat the procedure. The only question here is, why indulge in such a bizarre performance?
Well, whatever the reason, those are the murderer's tooth marks.
Unquestionably. You'll notice the eaten portion of the apple has only just commenced to turn brown. The bite was undoubtedly taken in this room. But to identify teeth marks is a monumental problem and might prove insoluble. Let's turn our attention to the compass for a moment.
Oh, I've never seen one like it. There are no numerals on it, no points of the compass indicated anywhere. Just a lot of funny little squiggles.
Oh, no, Watson. Surely you recall the singular affair of the Coptic patriarchs?
You overrate my memory, Holmes. In any case, I don't even know what a Copt is.
My dear Watson, sometimes you astound me.
Well, it seems to me it takes very little to astound you. I repeat, what is a Copt?
The Copts are the principal Christian race descended from ancient Egyptian stock. What you refer to as squiggles on this compass, in reality, are letters of the Coptic alphabet.
Well, that makes it more confusing than ever. An apple bitten into by an eccentric, and now a compass with ancient Egyptian lettering on it. I just can't see any relation between the two of them.
And yet we know there must be. That's what makes the problem so fascinating.
Well, what does the compass tell you, Holmes?
2 things. The Coptic lettering on the dial is inscribed by hand. Obviously, it was constructed for a Copt who could speak no European language.
Yes, the corpse was definitely not of Egyptian origin. I'll wager that he was born not too far away from the sound of bow bells.
I agree, Watson. And so the problem becomes more confusing. Now, let us examine another piece of this fascinating puzzle. The railway ticket.
Well, it's the unused return half of a first-class ticket from the village of Chipping Sodbury to London.
Yes, and the date stamped on the back is November the 6th.
Today?
Yes, Watson, today. Chipping Sodbury is a tiny village.
I imagine that the number of passengers that travelled from there to London this morning could be counted on one hand.
You're going to Chipping Sodbury?
Yes. It shouldn't be too hard to find out who purchased this ticket. And while I'm doing that, I want you to stand guard here.
With the corpse?
Yes, Watson. And I suggest that you keep your revolver handy.
My revolver? You mean...
I mean that after what has happened in one short morning in Baker Street, we should be prepared for any eventuality.
In just a moment, we'll see just what eventualities do develop. But first, if you're smart, you'll take better care of the hair you've got. Let me assure you, men, you can't use a better product than Kreml Hair Tonic. This highly specialized hair tonic contains a special combination of hair grooming ingredients which no other hair tonic has. That is why Kreml keeps your hair in place longer. Why your hair always has such a natural, well-groomed appearance, never greasy or sticky. And listen carefully to this, men. Kreml does lots more than keep hair looking handsome. A quick massage with Kreml stimulates the circulation of blood right in the surface of the scalp. Notice how alive, how invigorated, how clean your scalp feels. At the same time, Kreml removes loose dandruff. And if your hair is so dry that it breaks and falls, Kreml actually helps condition the hair by making it feel softer, more pliable. So, men, why be satisfied with a product which merely keeps your hair in place when you can have handsomely groomed hair plus all those extra advantages of Kreml? Buy a bottle as soon as possible at any drug counter. Kreml, Kreml Hair Tonic. Well, Dr. Watson, it seems to me that Professor Moriarty did quite a job in sending you and Sherlock Holmes off on a false trail.
He did, Mr. Bell, and for a while his nefarious plan succeeded. But to take up the story where I left off, while I stood guard in Baker Street over the mysterious corpse, Holmes caught the next train for the tiny village of Chipping Sodbury. He told me that after a talk with the village station master, he had no trouble in tracing the purchaser of the first-class railway ticket that we'd found beside the body. It had been bought by a dignified and elderly clergyman by the name of Russell, and Holmes lost no time in calling on him.
The station master told me, sir, that you were the only person to purchase a return first-class ticket to London this morning.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. I had occasion to make one of my rare excursions to London this morning. But though it was an unfortunate experience for me, I can't think my humble visit to the city could be a matter of any possible interest to you.
I'm very interested in what happened to the return half of your railway ticket, sir.
Very odd you should mention that. A regrettable business. Most regrettable. It was stolen from me by a pickpocket, together with my watch and chain. Didn't notice it until I had occasion to look at the time when I was lunching with the Bishop of St. Luke's.
You've no idea when or where the theft took place, sir?
I walked from the station. The crowds were quite dense, and I do recall being jostled rather heavily on one occasion.
You reported your loss to the police, I suppose?
Naturally, but I have little hope that they'll catch the criminal. Most regrettable business. Cost me a watch and the price of another ticket. An expensive lesson in the frailty of human nature. Do you care for a cup of tea, Mr. Holmes?
No, thank you. I'm afraid I haven't time. I must return to London on the next train. Urgent and unfinished business awaits me there.
We followed Sherlock Holmes to Paddington Station, Professor Moriarty.
Excellent. He caught the train for Chipping Sodbury, no doubt, Carter?
Oh, yes, Professor. Fat on the good that'll do him, even if he does find the old clergyman we pinched the stuff from.
But it consumed valuable time. Time during which I can complete our plans regarding the Star of Kersul. Before midnight tonight, I think I can safely say that the jewel will be in our hands. How very fortunate that Sherlock Holmes has such a devouring curiosity.
Any luck, Holmes?
A waste of valuable time, Watson. I found the purchase of the ticket all right. The return half, together with his watch, had been stolen by a pickpocket.
Oh, Lord, so that means we start all over again.
No, Watson. At least one clue has been eliminated. Let us analyze the remaining ones more thoroughly. Now, the problem of the Coptic compass should next engage our attention. A call on the Egyptian embassy might prove illuminating.
You know, Holmes, while you were away, I had a brainwave.
Congratulations.
It was connected with the missing clothes from the corpse. Where, I asked myself, where would be the obvious place to hide clothes? Why, in the clothes closet, of course. So I searched both our wardrobes absolutely thoroughly. They weren't there.
Interesting, Watson. Of course, I'd already done the same thing.
Oh?
The problem of the missing clothes is still... Numbskull.
Yes, Holmes?
Why didn't I think of it before?
What is it, Holmes?
The special wardrobe that I keep for my disguises in the dressing room. Come on, Watson.
By Jove, yes, I never thought of that.
Perfect place for hiding the dead man's clothes. Let's see if there have been any recent additions to this Raggledy collection of mine. Costa's outfit.
There's a clergyman's suit. You always made a surprise.
Brought to many a servant's back door. The stained and roughened worsteds of the English plumber. Yes, these patched and frayed ghosts could tell many a tale of... Hello. Look here, Watson.
Plain blue suit in rather good condition.
Quite. And it doesn't belong in my collection. I think we've solved the mystery of the vanishing clothes.
The labels have been ripped out of the coat.
Yes, and the pockets emptied. All possible identification removed. We're getting warm, Watson. We're getting very warm. Wait a minute.
What is it?
Give me a knife.
All right, sure.
There's something in the lining of this coat. Feels like paper. Perhaps the murderer didn't remove all identification after all.
Here you are. These scissors will do the trick.
Splendid. There we are.
Piece of paper sewn to the padding of the coat.
Yes. Let's see what it tells us. Humphrey Pedder, 118 Montague Crescent, Knightsbridge.
That's the private detective you were talking about earlier on today. Do you suppose that Pedder's the corpse?
At this stage, Watson, I shall suppose nothing. We'll go to Montague Crescent and find out for ourselves.
Mr. Pedder, I can't say how glad I am that we found you alive and well.
From what you gentlemen have told me, Doctor, I feel glad myself to be here.
Is it your custom to have an extra identification label sewn into all your clothes, Mr. Pedder?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. A detective never knows what may happen to him. I've always felt such identification might be valuable.
A very sound precaution.
Thank you, sir.
And you will say that a suit of your clothes was stolen from your wardrobe last night?
Yes, and I can't unearth a clue. Embarrassing situation for a detective, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, it certainly is.
Though I'm sure in your position, you've never had a thing like that happen to you.
I doubt, Mr. Pedder, if you know just how embarrassing a detective's life may become.
Yes, indeed. Take our present situation, for instance.
Quite, Watson. Mr. Pedder.
I can't get a word in, Edgeworth.
Did Major Stanley call on you today? I suggested that you would be eminently suited to the task of guarding the Maharaja's diamond.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. I'm going over to the Savoy tonight to talk to the Maharaja. Much obliged to you for giving me the recommendation, particularly since I've never had the privilege of meeting you.
I'd heard very flattering reports of your ability.
I'm very glad, Mr. Holmes. Your recommendation means a lot to me.
Well, Holmes, we've drawn another blank.
Yes, Watson. I fear we must return to Baker Street and see if an ancient compass can point the way to the solution.
Where to, sir?
The Egyptian embassy in Grosvenor Square, cabby.
What, George,
Jump in, Watson.
Oh, I feel a blasted fool trotting around London with a Coptic compass under my arm. I hope this leads us somewhere.
If the excursion proves fruitless, Watson, I'm afraid I shall be compelled to get in touch with Scotland Yard. A few hours' delay in reporting a murder can be explained, but beyond that, we may find ourselves in trouble.
I think you should have reported it before this. By the way, Holmes, did you notice the brougham and pair that drove up to Pedder's house just as we left?
I'm afraid for once I was sufficiently preoccupied to yield to you in observation, my dear Watson.
I'm not certain, but I thought that it was Major Stanley who stepped out of it.
Major Stanley? And yet Mr. Pedder said that... But of course! What an idiot I've been! Cabby! Cabby!
Yes, sir?
Turn around and drive us to the Savoy Hotel as fast as you can.
Right, you are, But why the Savoy Hotel, Holmes?
Surely the situation is crystal clear now, Watson.
Just about as clear as porridge to me.
The whole thing's a plot to fool me. Tell me, Watson, what is suggested to you by the combination of an unclothed corpse, a stolen suit, and a railroad ticket?
Well, if I knew the answer, Holmes, I'd have given it to you this morning and saved ourselves a lot of trouble.
The answer, Watson, is organization. A group of well-organized criminals who are able to perform these unrelated tasks. And who's the only person in London who can arrange for running the criminal gamut from murder to plain pickpocketing? Moriarty.
Professor Moriarty?
Of course. Remember Mrs. Hudson's description of our visitor? Tall, thin, and with a high forehead. And if you add organization and Moriarty to Major Stanley, the Maharaja of Kursul, and a portrait painter, the sum total should be apparent.
You mean that you solved the problem of the unclothed corpse?
I mean I know precisely how Professor Moriarty intends to steal the star of Kursul. Charge the caddy. There's not a moment to lose.
Mr. Holmes, it's an astonishing story you've told me.
At least it explains my apparent rudeness this morning, Major Stanley.
I appreciate the embarrassing position in which my friend was placed, sir.
Yes, indeed. But of course you understand that Mr. Pedder here is now in charge of guarding the Star of Kursul.
Quite, Major. And you're in very excellent hands, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. But your own problem still fascinates me. The unclothed corpse, the compass, and the apple. As a humble exponent of your profession, I'm curious to see how you arrived at your conclusions.
I reached them only just in time, Mr. Pedder. If I hadn't, I should at this moment be paying a fruitless visit to the Egyptian embassy.
Well, I'm still confused, Holmes.
And yet the answer is simple. What was outstanding about the crime committed at Baker Street? What was its individual peculiarity?
Well, I suppose the air of mystery that surrounded it.
I prefer to use the word mystification. The crime fascinated me, stimulated me, as Professor Moriarty hoped it would, until I realized that it was intended to do precisely that. The whole plan was a decoy, designed to prevent me from accepting your mission, Major Stanley. How could I accept such a commonplace job as guarding a jewel while such a fascinating problem was presented in my own living room?
And the apple and the compass?
Fictional clues that led nowhere, but were sufficiently challenging for the criminal to know I wouldn't be able to resist tracking them down.
It's an amazing plot. The railway tickets and the suit of clothes that were stolen from me were all meant to focus your attention elsewhere and away from the diamond.
Exactly, Mr. Pedder.
Well, Mr. Holmes, I assure you we're very grateful for the warning. Yes. We shall be more than ever on our guard now. We know where the danger's coming from. Professor Moriarty. I'm taking the Star of Kursul back to the Bank of England in a few minutes. I assure you that I shall guard it extremely well.
I think, Mr. Pedder, that if you don't mind, I'll take charge of the stone.
But, Mr. Holmes, I've already been commissioned for the work.
That's true, Mr. Holmes. Since you refused the job, I had to make other arrangements. Mr. Pedder, was your own suggestion for the assignment?
Nonetheless, Major, I think the Maharaja will sleep much more comfortably if I take charge of the stone.
Holmes, I don't think it's very ethical. After all, you did refuse to take on the case, you know.
This is hardly a time for ethics, Watson. Where is the Star of Kursul, Major Stanley?
I just handed it over to Mr. Pedder before you arrived.
Then supposing you give it to me, Mr. Pedder. By the way, I don't have the pleasure of knowing your real name.
But Holmes, he's Humphrey Pedder.
Oh, no, Watson. The unclothed corpse of Humphrey Pedder still lies in Baker Street. This is one of Professor Moriarty's most trusted henchmen.
You're too smart for your own... Look out, he's got a revolver.
A little slow in drawing it.
A beautiful uppercut, Holmes.
Send for the police, please, Major Stanley. We have a prize catch for them here.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. I can't tell you how grateful I am.
I'll take the liberty of removing the diamond from the pocket of our recumbent friend. There we are. Behold, Watson, the Star of Kursul.
What a magnificent stone.
Magnificent. And yet one man was murdered for it. I only wish another might hang because of it.
But Moriarty still goes free, and he killed Pedder.
We'll catch him, Watson. We'll catch him. He is getting clumsy. If he'd noticed the credentials in Pedder's clothes, he would have been in possession of this bauble before the night is out.
Instead of which, the evidence of this man here may help us to trap him.
I hope so, Watson. But Moriarty inspires his henchmen with such loyalty that I doubt if he'll give us much help. The jewel is safe, our own peculiar problem is solved, and we've captured a prize villain. Next time, we shall capture the master himself.
Did you, Dr. Watson?
Did I what, Mr. Bell?
Did you and Holmes finally capture Professor Moriarty, the master himself?
No, Mr. Bell. Haven't you got a word for our listeners?
Yes, I have. In just a moment, Dr. Watson will be back to tell us about next week's story. Girls, here's some advice from one of America's foremost beauty authorities, John Robert Powers. Mr. Powers tells his famous $1 million Powers models to use only Kreml shampoo to wash their hair.
And how right Mr. Powers is. Because Kreml shampoo has been especially developed to glamour bathe each tiny strand of hair to its own natural, glossy luster. It leaves the hair shining bright for days. Just a vision of beauty.
You know, Kreml shampoo is great for washing children's hair, too.
Yes.
Its luxurious active foam thoroughly cleanses the hair and scalp and removes all loose dandruff as well as the dirt. Kreml shampoo never dries the hair. So, ladies, buy a bottle at any drug counter. See how easy it is to glamour bathe your hair to its natural shining glory. Kreml. Kreml shampoo. Now, Dr. Watson, what about next week?
Well, now, next week I think I'll tell you a story about a dowager dip.
A dowager dip? What on earth's that?
That's a slang way of saying that our story concerns the Dowager Duchess of Penfield, who had the misfortune of being a kleptomaniac. And the story also concerns the strange, and I must admit, embarrassing adventure of the elusive emerald.
Tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure was suggested by an incident in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Final Problem. Nigel Bruce appeared by permission of California Pictures. Tom Conway through the courtesy of Eagle Lion Pictures. This is Joseph Bell speaking for Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo. Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo. Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo. Kreml Hair Tonic and Kreml Shampoo.
Holmes, sir.
Mrs. Hunt.
Oh, whatever's wrong, sir? You're hurt.
Not hurt. Ill. Very ill.
Oh. Get you to your bed and then I'll go straight round for a doctor.
No.
Sir.
No doctor.
Mr. Holmes.
You hear me, Mrs. Hunt? No doctor.
But there's Dr. Watson, sir. Surely I can fetch him.
Not Watson. Not anyone. No doctors, Mrs. Hunt. No doctor. Only delirium could make Holmes turn on me, Dr. Watson, who had so often shared the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And still I could not bring myself to think that I was standing by his deathbed. I knew his great strength, but I will tell you about the dying detective. Sherlock Holmes' landlady at 221B Baker Street, Mrs. Hudson, was a long-suffering woman. She had the very worst tenant in London. Incredible untidiness, undesirable characters visiting at all hours, indoor revolver practice, weird and malodorous scientific experiments. All these and the atmosphere of violence and danger which hung around him. But his payments for her first-floor set of rooms were princely, and Mrs. Hudson never interfered. In fact, I think she was quite fond of him. Certainly when she hurried into my consulting room, her anxious face told me more than words that something serious must be amiss with my old friend.
Dr. Watson, sir, he's dying.
Dying? Not Mr. Holmes.
I don't think he'll last the day.
But this is the first I've
Oh,
heard.
you must come at once, sir, or it may be too late. I've kept my cab waiting outside.
But of course, immediately. Just let me get my bag. And as we drive, I hope you'll tell me what on earth happened.
I can tell you, Dr. Watson, he's been sinking steadily for 3 days.
3 days, and you've only just come to me?
Oh, I couldn't, sir. I wasn't allowed.
And allowed?
No.
Now, look here, Mrs. Hudson. I think I'd better have your account calmly and from the beginning, if you please.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Holmes has been working on some case down near the river at Rotherhithe just lately.
I see.
Well, do you know what it is for coming in at all hours? I was just taking my lamp to go through to my bed on Wednesday night when I heard a faint knocking at the street door. I went to see who it could be. Oh, Mr. Holmes, sir.
Mrs. Hunt.
Oh, whatever's wrong, sir? You're hurt.
Not hurt. Ill. Very ill.
Oh. get you to your bed, and then I'll go straight round for a doctor.
No.
Sir.
No doctor.
Mr. Holmes.
You hear me, Mrs. Hudson? No doctor.
But there's Dr. Watson, sir. Surely I can fetch him.
Not Watson. Not anyone. No doctors, Mrs. Hudson. No doctors.
I never heard anything so incredible in my life, Mrs.
I
Hudson.
tried to insist, but you know how masterful Mr. Holmes can be.
Yes, but 3 days.
Without a bite to eat or a drop to drink.
What?
Oh, I've tried so hard, sir. I really have.
I'm sure you have, Mrs. Hudson.
And he touched nothing. Whenever I mentioned a doctor, even you, sir, he made me promise again I'd do nothing. Although only this afternoon when I saw his face, I knew that he's not long for this world.
Oh.
I told him I was fetching you at once.
And he allowed it?
Well, I thought he didn't hear. He was so weak and listless. But when I told him again, he whispered, "Well, let it be Watson, then."
Well, that's something to be thankful for. I only hope we're in time. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. I'll call if I need you.
Very good, sir. Who's there?
It's me, Holmes. Watson.
Well, Watson, we seem to have fallen on evil days.
My dear fellow.
No, keep back. Stand right back. Don't come near.
Now, look here, Holmes.
It's for your sake, Watson. I've contracted a coolie disease from Sumatra. Very little known except that it's absolutely deadly and horribly contagious. So must keep away.
Good heavens, do you suppose such a consideration weighs with me? Even if I weren't a doctor, do you think it would stop me doing my duty to an old friend? Now, let's have a good look at you.
No! Stand back!
Now, see here, Holmes.
If you stay where you are, I'll talk to you. If you will not, you can get out.
Holmes!
If you will stay where...
Holmes, you aren't yourself. You're sick and helpless as a child. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to examine you and treat you.
If I'm to be forced to have a doctor, at least let me have someone in whom I have confidence.
You have none in me, then?
In your friendship, certainly. But facts are facts. As a medical man, you're a mere general practitioner of limited experience and mediocre qualifications.
Well, really.
It's painful to say such things, but you leave me no choice.
Thank you. Such a remark is unworthy of you, Holmes. It shows me very clearly the state of your nerves. Still, I will not intrude my services. But what I shall do is to summon Sir Jasper Meek or Penrose Fisher, or any of the other best men in London I can collect.
You mean well, Watson, but what do you or they know of Tapanuli fever?
Tapanuli?
What do you know of the Black Formosa corruption?
Never heard of either of them.
Nor have your colleagues. There are many problems of disease, many strange pathological possibilities peculiar to the East. So I've learned during some of my recent researches. It was in the course of one of them that I contracted this complaint. I assure you, Watson, you can do nothing.
Oh, can't I? I happen to know, Holmes, that the greatest living authority on tropical disease, Dr. Ainstree, is in London just now.
You shall have your way.
Good.
Only give me time to collect my strength. It's 4 o'clock now. At 6, you can go.
This is insanity.
No, I must sleep. I feel exhausted.
I stood for a few minutes, looking at the silent figure on the bed. And then, unable to think of sitting down, I paced up and down the room. Finally, in this aimless perambulation, I came to the mantelpiece, littered with pipes, tobacco pouches, syringes, penknives, revolver cartridges, almost everything you could think of. In the midst of all this was a small black and white ivory box with a sliding lid. It was a neat little thing, and I was just stretching out my hand to examine it more closely when...
No, Watson, no!
Hey, what?
Put it down! Down this instant. Do as I say.
Now, look here, Holmes, I really think...
I hate to have my things touched. You know that I hate it.
Holmes,
You fidget me beyond endurance. You, a doctor, you're enough to drive a patient into an asylum. Sit down, man, and let me have my rest.
This incident left a most unpleasant impression on my mind. Of all ruins, I reflected that of a noble mind is the most deplorable. I sat in silent dejection until the stipulated time had passed. He seemed in his sleep to have been watching the clock as well, for it was hardly 6 before he began to talk with the same feverish animation as before.
You will now light the gas, Watson, please. But you will be very careful that not for 1 instant shall it be more than half on.
As you wish.
I implore you to be careful.
Right.
Thank you. Excellent. Now you needn't draw the blind. Now, have the kindness to place some of that litter from the mantelpiece on this table next to me.
Oh, very well,
Watson, you'll see some sugar tongs there.
Yes?
Use them to lift that little ivory box carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Carefully now.
Yes. There we are.
Yes. Now bring it here and place it amongst these other things.
There.
So, good. You may now go and fetch a specialist.
Well, thank heaven for that.
His name is Mr. Culverton Smith of 13 Lower Burke Street.
Culverton Smith? I've never even heard the name.
Possibly not. It may surprise you to know that the one man who knows everything about this disease is not a medical man. He's a planter. An outbreak of this disease upon his plantation caused him to study intensively.
He's only a
He's a
planter.
very methodical man. And I asked you not to go before 6 because I knew you wouldn't find him in his study until then.
Holmes, I never heard such a foolish...
You would tell him exactly how you've left me. A dying man. A dying man. My life depends on him, Watson. But you will have to plead with him to come here. There's no good feeling between us. He has a grudge. I rely on you to soften him. Beg him, Watson. Pray him. But get him here by any means. He can save me. Only he...
Oh, very well. I'll bring him in a cab, even if I have to carry him down.
You do nothing of the sort.
What?
You will persuade him to come. And then you will return before him.
Why?
Make any excuse so as not to come with him. Now, don't forget that, Watson.
No, of course.
You won't fail me.
I'm going, Holmes. Say no more. I'm going.
Now, my dear sir, kindly take a chair.
Thank you.
Holmes, ill, you say?
Desperately.
I only know Mr. Holmes through some business dealings we've had, but I've every respect for his talents and character. He is an amateur of crime, as I am of disease. For him, the villain. For me, the microbe. There are my prisons, Doctor.
Huh?
Those jars on the table there.
I see.
Amongst those gelatine cultivations, some of the very worst offenders in the world are now doing time.
It is on account of your special knowledge that Mr. Holmes wishes to see you, Mr. Smith.
See me?
He has a very high opinion of you. He thought you were the one man in London who could help him.
And why should Mr. Holmes think I can help him?
Your knowledge of Eastern diseases.
But why should he think that this disease which he has contracted is Eastern?
Well, it seems likely. He's been working amongst Chinese sailors down in the docks.
How long has he been ill?
About 3 days.
Is he delirious?
Occasionally.
This sounds serious, Doctor.
It is indeed.
It would be inhuman not to answer his call. I very much resent any interruption to my work, but on this occasion, I will come with you at once.
Thank you, but I have another appointment.
Oh, very well then. I will go alone. Thank you. Number 221B Baker Street, isn't it?
That's correct.
Then you can rely on my being there within half an hour.
Well, did you see him, Watson?
He'll be here soon, Holmes. Took me some minutes to find a cab, but...
Did he ask what ailed me?
Yes, I told him about the Chinese down at the docks.
Exactly. Well, Watson, you've done all a good friend could. You may now disappear from the scene.
Disappear? I want to hear what he says. I want to hear every word of this medical expert's opinion.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
Of course.
I think you will just find room behind the head of my bed.
What, hide?
I have reasons to suppose that his opinion will be much more frank and valuable if he imagines he's alone with me.
Listen, that's probably him now.
Then get behind the bed, Watson, and don't budge whatever happens.
Right.
Whatever happens, do you hear?
Oh, all right.
Just listen. Don't speak. Don't move. Just listen with all your ears.
Oh, very well.
As you wish.
So, Holmes, it's come to this, then.
Oh, Smith? Is that you?
Yes.
I hardly dared hope you would come.
I should imagine not. And yet, you see, I'm here. Coals of fire, Holmes. Coals of fire.
Noble of you.
Yes, isn't it?
I appreciate your special knowledge.
Then you're the only man in London who does. Do you know what is the matter with you?
Same as young Victor, your nephew.
Ah, then you recognize the symptoms.
Yes.
Well, then it's a bad lookout for you. Poor Victor was a strong, hearty young fellow, but a dead man on the fourth day. As you said at the time, it was rather surprising that he should contract an out-of-the-way Asiatic disease in the heart of London, a disease of which I have made such a very special study. And now you, Holmes. Singular coincidence, Or are you going to start making accusations once again about cause and effect and so on?
I knew you caused Victor Savage's death.
Did you? Well, proving it is a different matter, Holmes. But what do you think of yourself? Spreading lying reports about me one moment, then crawling to me for help the next.
Only cure me, and I promise to forget.
Forget what?
About Victor Savage's death.
Oh, well.
You as good as admitted just now that you had done it. I swear I will forget.
Forget it. Remember it. Do as you like. I don't see you in any witness box, Holmes. Quite another shaped box, I assure you. But first, how did you get this disease?
Working amongst Chinese sailors down at the docks.
Proud of your brains, aren't you? Think yourself smart? Well, you've met a smarter one this time. Getting painful, is it? It takes you as a cramp, I fancy.
Yes, it's cramp.
Well, you can still hear me. Now, can you remember any unusual incident just about the time your symptoms began?
I can't think. My mind is gone. Oh, Smith.
Did anything come to you through the post, for instance?
By post?
A little box, perhaps? Listen, Holmes. You shall hear me. Don't you remember a box? A little ivory box? It came on Wednesday. You opened it. Do you remember?
Yes, I opened it. There was something sharp inside. I pricked my finger. Some sort of joke.
It was no joke, Holmes. You fool! Who asked you to cross my path? If you'd only left me alone, I would never have hurt you.
The box. Yes, this one. Here on the table.
Ah, by George, so it is. Well, it leaves this room in my pocket. And there's your last shred of evidence gone. But you have the truth now, Holmes. You can die knowing that I killed you. You knew too much about what happened to Victor Savage, so you must share his fate.
No.
Yes, Holmes. You're very near your end now. I'll sit here and watch you die.
It's getting so dark. I can't see. Smith, are you there?
Yes.
The gas. For pity's sake, turn up the gas.
Ah, the shadows begin to fall, do they, Holmes? Yes, I'll turn up the gas for you. I can watch your face more plainly then. There. Now, is there any further service I can render you?
If you please, a cigarette and a match.
What? What's the meaning of this?
The best way of successfully acting a part is to be it. What? I give you my word that for 3 days I have neither tasted food nor drink.
You mean you...
But it was the lack of tobacco I found most irksome. Here are some cigarettes. And some matches, too.
That's better. You devil. You absolute devil.
Hello. Do I hear the step of a friend?
What?
Mr. Holmes?
Inspector Morton, all is in order, and this is your man.
What is the meaning of this?
Calvert and Smith, I arrest you on the charge of the murder of one Victor Savage. And I must warn you that anything you say...
You've got nothing on me. It's all a trick. It's a pack of lies.
Yourself? You get yourself a look.
Well, get away.
Put the cuffs on him, Constable. That'll do.
By the way, Inspector, you might add the attempted murder of one Sherlock Holmes to that charge.
Don't listen to him.
And you'll find a small box in the right-hand pocket of your prisoner's coat. They leave it on the table here. Handle it gingerly, though. It may play its part at his trial.
Trial? You'll be the one in the dock, Holmes. Inspector, he asked me to come here to cure him. He was ill, and I was sorry for him, so I came. Now he'll pretend I've said anything he cares to invent that will corroborate his insane suspicions. Well, you can lie as you like, Holmes. My word's as good as yours.
Good heavens! I'd completely forgotten him.
Forgotten who, sir?
Watson, my dear fellow, do come out.
What the devil are you doing?
I owe you 1,000 apologies. To think that I should have overlooked you.
Oh, it's all right, Holmes. Just a bit cramped, that's all.
What is all this?
I need not introduce you to Mr. Calvert and Smith, since I understand you met somewhat earlier in the evening.
You mean you had all this planned?
Of course, to the last detail. I think I may say it worked very well. With your assistance, Smith, of course.
Mine?
You saved an invalid trouble by giving my signal to Inspector Morton waiting outside.
What?
You turned up the gas.
I better take him along now, sir. We'll see you down at the yard presently, perhaps.
Very well, Inspector. And many thanks.
Goodbye,
Well,
well, what? There's a bottle of claret on the chest of drawers over there.
Good.
It's uncorked. Yes, and some biscuits in a tin. If you'll be so kind, I'm badly in need of both.
Certainly. You know, Holmes, this seems a pretty elaborate way to go about catching that. I mean, taking in Mrs. Hudson and me like that, scaring us half to death.
Well, it was very essential that I should make Mrs. Hudson believe in my condition. She was to convey it to you and you to him.
Yes, but all the same...
Now, don't be offended, my good Watson. You must admit that among your many talents, dissimulation scarcely finds a place. If you'd shared my secret, you'd never have been able to impress Smith with the urgent necessity of coming to me.
No, I suppose not.
You see, it was the vital point of the whole scheme. I knew his vindictive nature, and I was certain he'd come to gloat over his handiwork.
But your appearance, Holmes, your face, you really do look ghastly.
3 days of absolute fast does not improve one's beauty, Watson. For the rest, there's nothing that the sponge won't cure. Vaseline to produce the glistening forehead, belladonna in the eyes, rouge over the cheekbones, And crusts of beeswax around one's lips.
That's what you... And why wouldn't you let me near you? There was no risk of infection.
Oh, can you ask me, my dear Watson?
Yes, I can.
Do you imagine that I've really no respect for your medical talents? Or that your astute judgment would be deceived by a dying man with no rise of pulse or temperature? At 4 yards distance, I could deceive you.
This box there.
No, Watson, I wouldn't touch it. You can just see if you look at the side, where the sharp blade emerges as you open it. I dare say it was by some such device that poor young Savage was done to death. He stood between that monster and an inheritance, you know.
Then it's true, Holmes. You might have been killed too.
As you know, my correspondence is a varied one. I'm somewhat on my guard against any packages which reach me. But I saw that by pretending that he'd succeeded in his design, I might be enabled to surprise a confession out of it. That pretense, I think I may claim to have carried out with the thoroughness of a true artist.
You certainly did, Holmes. Some more biscuits?
No, thank you, Watson. Let us preserve our appetite. When we've finished at the police station, I think something nutritious at Pagani's would not be out of place.
Yes. Let's start with a couple of dozen oysters. The Dying Detective was another story of Sherlock Holmes from the inspired pen of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In real life, I'm an actor, and my name is Norman Shelley. My old friend Carlton Hobbs played the part of Sherlock Holmes, and I was Dr. Watson. Production was by the British Broadcasting Corporation from London. Script by Michael Hardwick. I hope I may look forward to the pleasure of your company again before very long for more of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes.